Bleeding on a rain-soaked bridge with federal snipers closing in, former FBI profiler Nyla Mercer made a choice that would destroy her career forever. She saved the serial killer she'd sworn to execute. Except Kang Min-jae wasn't the monster. Her mentor was. And the truth hiding beneath New York's most dangerous nightclub would tear apart everything she believed about justice, power, and the thin line between predator and protector. If you want to see how deep this darkness goes, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story reaches across the world. The bass hit like a fist to the sternum. Nyla Mercer felt it vibrate through the polished mahogany bar, through the crystal glasses lined up like soldiers waiting for deployment, through her rib cage and into the part of her chest where she kept all the rage carefully locked away. Eclipse Vale wasn't just a nightclub, it was an organism, breathing smoke and sweat and expensive perfume, pulsing with violet neon that made everyone look either beautiful or dead. She poured vodka with mechanical precision while her eyes tracked every corner of the room. 3 months she'd been behind this bar. 3 months of mixing drinks for Manhattan's elite scum while building a case that would finally put Kang Min-jae in a federal prison cell for the rest of his life. The Harbor Butcher. 17 confirmed murders, dozens more suspected. Women who vanished from high-end clubs and charity galas, their bodies discovered weeks later in industrial zones along the waterfront, mutilated beyond recognition. The FBI had been hunting him for 4 years. Nyla had been hunting him for exactly 93 days. Whiskey sour, light on the sugar. She turned. The woman at the bar was young, maybe 23, wearing a dress that cost more than Nyla's monthly rent. Diamond earrings caught the strobing lights. Vacant eyes suggested this wasn't her first drink of the night. "Coming up," Nyla said. Her hands moved through the routine. Glass, ice, bourbon, lemon juice, simple syrup, shake, strain, garnish, smile. The smile was the hardest part. It had to look genuine enough to blend in, but empty enough that nobody tried to befriend her. Behind her reflection in the mirrored back bar, she watched the VIP section. Kang Min-jae sat in his usual booth like a king holding court in hell. Black silk shirt, black slacks. Serpent tattoo coiling up his throat from beneath his collar. The head of the snake resting just below his jawline, like it was tasting the air for threats. His face was beautiful in the way sharp things were beautiful. High cheekbones, dark eyes that never blinked too fast, mouth set in a line that suggested he'd forgotten how to smile years ago. Women approached his table every 15 minutes. He dismissed them with a glance. Men came to negotiate. He listened without speaking, then gave orders so quiet Nyla couldn't hear them, even with the directional microphone hidden in her necklace. And every so often his eyes would sweep across the nightclub like a lighthouse beam searching for shipwrecks. Nyla had studied his patterns obsessively. Thursday nights he arrived at 10:30. He stayed until 1 a.m., unless someone important required his attention. He drank single malt scotch, never more than 2 glasses. He touched his phone exactly 7 times per hour. And twice each night he disappeared into the back hallway near the restrooms for approximately 4 minutes. That hallway led to his private office. And his office had a door that connected to the basement. The basement nobody talked about. The basement that didn't appear on any building schematics filed with the city. "Hey, bartender!" Nyla snapped her attention back to the present. A man in an expensive suit leaned against the bar, grinning like he'd just discovered something valuable. Mid-40s, wedding ring, cologne that probably cost $200 an ounce. "What can I get you?" she asked. "Your number." "We don't give those out. What can I get you to drink?" His grin widened. "You're new here, right? I haven't seen you before." 3 months, Nyla said. "Vodka tonic? Gin and tonic? Beer? 3 months and you still think you're too good for the customers?" He laughed. "That's cute. You know who owns this place, sweetheart? You know what kind of girls work in Kang Min-jae's clubs?" Nyla's hand tightened around the cocktail shaker. She wanted to break his nose, wanted to show him the FBI badge she kept hidden in her apartment, along with the Glock 19 and the case files documenting every woman this organization had destroyed. Wanted to tell him that in approximately 6 weeks, she'd have enough evidence to collapse this entire syndicate, and everyone in it would be wearing federal orange. Instead, she smiled. "I'll get you a beer," she said. She turned away before he could respond. pulling a bottle from the cooler and snapping the cap off with more force than necessary. When she turned back, the man was gone. Kang Min-jae stood at the bar instead. Nyla's pulse spiked. He shouldn't be here. He never came to the bar. He sent people to the bar. He stayed in his booth surrounded by enforcers and expensive liquor and the kind of power that made men kill for his approval. But now he was standing 3 feet away looking directly at her. "You're wasting your talent," he said. His voice was quiet, controlled. The kind of voice that didn't need to be loud because everyone already knew to listen. Nyla forced her breathing to stay steady. "Excuse me?" "Mixing drinks." Min-jae tilted his head slightly, studying her face the way someone might study a painting they suspected was forged. "You move like someone trained for violence, not hospitality." "I used to bartend in Boston," Nyla lied smoothly. "Rough neighborhood. You learn to handle yourself." "Boston." He repeated the word like he was tasting it for poison. "What brought you to New York?" "Better tips." "And you chose Eclipse Vale." "I chose a job that pays rent." Something flickered behind his eyes. Not quite amusement, more like recognition. "What's your name?" he asked. "Maya," Neela said. That was the name on her fake ID, her forged employment papers, her fabricated background check. Maya Cross. 28 years old, bartending school graduate. No criminal record, no federal training, no history hunting serial killers through Manhattan's criminal underworld. Maya. Min-jae let the name hang in the air between them. Then he leaned forward slightly, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something dark and expensive that probably cost more than her entire undercover wardrobe. "Tell me, Maya, what do you think happens to people who lie to me?" Nyla's hand moved instinctively toward the knife she kept strapped to her inner thigh. Min-jae noticed. His eyes dropped to where her hand had moved, then back to her face, and for just a second, the corner of his mouth twitched. "Careful," he said softly. "Reaching for weapons in my establishment tends to end badly." "I wasn't—" "You were." He straightened. "But I appreciate the honesty of the reflex. Most people lie better than that." Then he turned and walked back to his booth. Nyla stood frozen behind the bar, adrenaline screaming through her nervous system. He knew. He fucking knew. Not everything. If he knew everything, she'd already be dead in a shipping container heading for international waters. But he suspected something, saw through the cover story, recognized that she didn't belong in this world. She needed to report this. Her FBI handler, Special Agent Victor Hale, had been explicit during their last briefing. Any sign of exposure meant immediate extraction. They'd pull her out, regroup, try again with a different operative. The case was too important to risk. But Nyla had spent 3 months building this cover. 3 months documenting Min-jae's network, identifying his enforcers, mapping his operations. She was close, so fucking close to proving he was the harbor butcher. She couldn't walk away now. The rest of the night crawled past like broken glass. Nyla mixed drinks on autopilot while her mind raced through contingency plans. Min-jae stayed in his booth, conducting business as usual. He didn't look at her again. Didn't send anyone to question her. Didn't do anything except exist in his usual position of terrible power. Maybe she'd imagined the danger. Maybe he flirted with suspicion the way other men flirted with women. Maybe she was fine. At 11:15, Min-jae stood and walked toward the back hallway. Nyla watched him disappear past the restrooms, heading toward the private corridor that led to his office. This was his pattern. 4 minutes. He'd emerge exactly 4 minutes later. Except tonight, 5 minutes passed. Then 6. Then 7. The head of security, a brick-shaped enforcer named Dimitri, walked past the bar and followed Min-jae into the hallway. Something was wrong. Nyla's instincts screamed at her to stay behind the bar, keep mixing drinks, maintain the cover. But her training screamed louder. If Min-jae was moving, she needed to know why. If he was accessing the basement, she needed to see what was down there. This was the opportunity she'd been waiting for. She told the other bartender she needed a smoke break, slipped out from behind the bar, and moved through the crowd like water finding cracks in concrete. The music was loud enough to drown out thought. The lights were strobing fast enough to make everyone's movements look stuttered and inhuman. Nobody noticed her. She reached the back hallway and paused. Empty. The door to Min-jae's office was closed. no light visible underneath. She moved past it quickly, heading for the service exit that led to the loading dock. But as she passed the office, she noticed something. A second door, hidden behind a decorative panel that had been slid aside. Metal, reinforced, biometric lock glowing red. Nyla's pulse hammered. This was it, the entrance to the basement, the place where the harbor butcher likely kept evidence, victims, weapons, everything the FBI needed to destroy his empire. She pulled out her phone, angling for a photo. "I wouldn't do that," the voice came from behind her. Nyla spun. Min Jae stood 3 feet away, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. He'd been waiting for her. "Looking for the bathroom?" he asked quietly. "Yes," Nyla said. Her hand moved toward the knife again. "Stop." The single word carried enough weight to freeze her in place. "If you draw that weapon, Dmitri will put 3 bullets in your spine before you take another breath. So let's skip the performance." Nyla's mind raced through tactical options. She could scream, could run, could try to fight her way past him and call for extraction. But all of those options ended with her dead or captured and the case collapsing. So instead, she did something reckless. She told the truth. "I know what you are," she said. Min Jae studied her face. "What am I?" "A killer. The harbor butcher. You've murdered at least 17 women in the past 4 years, probably more." Silence stretched between them like a blade. Then Min Jae smiled. It wasn't the expression she expected. Not cruel, not threatening, just tired. 17, he repeated. "That's what the FBI profile says?" Neela's blood turned to ice. "How do you know that you're a federal agent?" Min Jae finished. "Please. You think I run an organization this size without vetting every employee? I knew who you were the day you applied for this job, Agent Mercer." The world tilted. He'd known. For 3 months, he'd known exactly who she was. "Then why—" Nyla couldn't finish the sentence. "Why did I let you stay?" Min Jae stepped closer. "Because I wanted to see what you'd find, what patterns you'd notice, what conclusions you'd draw." He paused. "And because I needed to know if you were smart enough to realize the truth before it killed you." "What truth?" Min Jae reached past her and pressed his palm against the biometric lock. The metal door hissed open. "Come with me," he said. "There's someone downstairs who's been waiting to meet you." Every instinct Nyla had screamed at her to run, but curiosity was a sharper knife than fear. She followed Kang Min Jae into the basement beneath Eclipse Veil. The elevator descended for 30 seconds, long enough that Nyla realized they were going much deeper than a standard basement level. The doors opened onto a corridor lit with soft white lights, clinical, clean, nothing like the blood-soaked torture chamber she'd expected. Min Jae walked ahead without checking if she followed. She did. The corridor opened into a wider space. Living quarters, a kitchen area, bookshelves, comfortable furniture, and sitting on a couch, wrapped in a blanket and drinking tea, was a young woman Nyla recognized immediately. Elena Vasquez. Missing for 6 months, presumed murdered by the harbor butcher. Her case file was sitting in Neela's apartment right now, except Elena wasn't dead. She was alive, safe, staring at Nyla with wide, frightened eyes. "Holy shit," Nyla whispered. "There are 7 others," Min Jae said quietly behind her. "All women the Bureau assumes were murdered. All witnesses to a trafficking network that extends into federal law enforcement, the judiciary, and organized crime across 3 states. Nyla turned to face him. "You've been hiding them." "Protecting them," Min Jae corrected. "The real killer wants them dead because they can testify. I want them alive for the same reason." "The real killer," Nyla's voice came out flat. "You're saying you're not the harbor butcher?" "No." Min Jae met her eyes. "I'm saying your mentor is." The words hit like a bullet. "What?" "Special Agent Victor Hale." Min Jae pulled a tablet from a nearby desk and handed it to her. "The man who recruited you for this undercover operation. The man who's been feeding you intelligence about my organization for 3 months. He's the one killing these women." Nyla stared at the screen. Financial records, offshore accounts, encrypted communications, surveillance footage showing Victor Hale meeting with known traffickers. Photographs of him entering locations where victims were last seen alive. Her hand started shaking. "This is fake," she said. "You fabricated this." "Check the metadata," Min-jae said calmly. "Cross-reference the timestamps with Bureau case files. I think you'll find it's extremely real." Nyla wanted to throw the tablet across the room, wanted to scream that this was impossible, that Victor Hale had been her mentor for 6 years, that he'd taught her how to profile violent offenders and build airtight cases and survive in a world designed to destroy women like her. But she'd been trained to follow evidence, and the evidence was staring her in the face. "Why?" she whispered. "Money, power, control." Min-jae's voice was cold. "Hale uses his position in the FBI to identify women connected to trafficking networks, victims, witnesses, potential informants. Then he eliminates them before they can testify. He's been doing it for at least 4 years, probably longer." "And you just, what, decided to save them?" "I decided not to let innocent people die for someone else's crimes." Min-jae took the tablet back. "Hale has been framing me as the harbor butcher because it's convenient. I'm a criminal. I run illegal operations. If the murders get pinned on me, nobody asks questions about federal corruption." Nyla's mind was racing too fast to think clearly. "If this is true, it is true. Then why tell me? I'm FBI. I came here to arrest you." Min-jae smiled that tired smile again. "Because Victor Hale sent you here to die, Agent Mercer. And in approximately," he checked his watch, "6 minutes, he's going to make his move." "What are you talking about?" "He knows you're close to discovering the truth. That's why he pushed so hard for this undercover operation. He needed you inside my organization so he could eliminate you and frame it as a syndicate killing." Min-jae walked toward the elevator. "Your extraction signal was compromised 2 weeks ago. There is no backup team coming. When you leave this building tonight, Hale will be waiting." Nyla's stomach dropped. "How do you know that?" "Because I have people inside the bureau too." Min-jae pressed the elevator button. "And because 20 minutes ago, one of Hale's contractors positioned himself in the alley behind this building with a suppressed pistol." The elevator doors opened. "So now you have a choice," Min-jae said. "You can go upstairs, walk out the back exit like you planned, and let Victor Hale put a bullet in your chest. Or you can stay down here, review the evidence, and help me destroy him before he kills anyone else." Nyla stared at the Korean Mafia boss who'd just dismantled her entire understanding of reality. "Why should I trust you?" "You shouldn't." Min-jae stepped into the elevator. "But trust isn't the same as tactical alliance, and right now, Agent Mercer, I'm the only person in this city who wants to keep you alive." The elevator doors started to close. Nyla made her choice. She stepped inside. The doors sealed shut, and the elevator began to rise. Min-jae stood beside her in silence, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. "If you're lying to me," Nyla started, "you'll kill me. I understand." He didn't sound concerned. "But I'm not lying. And in about 3 minutes, you're going to wish I was." The elevator reached the ground floor. The doors opened onto the back hallway. Min-jae gestured for her to exit first. Nyla stepped out, hand instinctively moving toward her concealed knife. The hallway was empty. Music pounded through the walls. Everything looked normal. Then she heard the voice. "Maya, you back here?" It was Danny, the other bartender. Young kid, maybe 25, always smiling. He walked around the corner carrying a crate of liquor bottles. "Hey, I covered your section, but we're running low on..." The gunshot was almost silent. Danny's head snapped back. Blood sprayed across the wall. His body collapsed like someone had cut all his strings at once, the liquor bottles shattering across the floor in an explosion of glass and alcohol. Nyla froze. A figure emerged from the shadows near the back exit. Tactical gear. Suppressed pistol. Professional stance. The contractor swung his weapon toward her. Min-jae moved faster than should have been possible. He grabbed Nyla's shoulder and yanked her backward into the hallway as bullets punched through the air where her head had been half a second earlier. They hit the floor together, rolling behind a structural pillar while gunfire chewed through drywall and wood paneling. "East stairwell," Min-jae said. His voice was perfectly calm. "Now." They ran. Behind them, the contractor advanced methodically, firing controlled bursts. Ahead, an alarm started screaming. The The nightclub erupted into chaos, people screaming, stampeding toward exits, the music cutting out abruptly. Min-jae pulled a phone from his pocket and spoke rapid Korean into it. Nyla didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. Lockdown. They hit the stairwell and climbed. 2 floors up, Min-jae pushed through a door into what looked like private office space. He locked it behind them and crossed to a desk, pulling a false panel away to reveal a hidden safe. "How many contractors?" Nyla asked. Her hands were shaking. Danny's blood was still warm on her sleeve. "At least 3. Hale doesn't take chances." Min-jae opened the safe and pulled out 2 handguns. He offered one to Nyla. "Do you know how to use this?" She took the weapon automatically, Glock 17 full magazine. "Yes." "Good." Min-jae checked his own pistol with practiced efficiency. "Because we have approximately 90 seconds before they breach this floor, and I need to know if you're with me or against me." Nyla stared at him. 20 minutes ago, she'd been sure he was a serial killer. Now she was standing in his office, holding his gun while federal contractors tried to murder them both. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Help me prove Hale is the harbor butcher." Min-jae's dark eyes locked onto hers. "Work with me instead of against me. We combine your profiling skills with my resources, and we build a case that destroys him before he kills anyone else." "And if I say no?" "Then you die tonight, and so do the 8 women downstairs, and Victor Hale keeps murdering people until someone else figures out the truth." Min-jae tilted his head slightly. "But you won't say no." "How do you know?" "Because you're not the kind of person who walks away from innocent people." He smiled that tired smile. "That's why Hale targeted you in the first place. He knew you'd follow the case anywhere, even into hell." Somewhere below them, glass shattered. Heavy boots pounded upstairs. Nyla made her second choice of the night. "Where do we start?" she said. Min-jae's smile widened. "With the profile," he said. "Tell me everything you know about the harbor butcher, and I'll tell you where your mentor made mistakes." They worked fast. Nyla laid out the psychological profile she'd built over 3 months. Victimology, geographic patterns, signature behaviors, everything that pointed toward a killer with intimate knowledge of law enforcement procedure and access to restricted databases. Min-jae listened without interrupting. Then he pulled up files on his computer. "Every woman Hale murdered was connected to a trafficking investigation," he explained. "Federal cases involving judges, politicians, organized crime figures. The network spans 3 states and generates approximately $40 million annually. Hale has been eliminating witnesses systematically." "But why frame you?" "Because I've been interfering." Min-jae pulled up surveillance footage. "My organization operates in the same circles as the trafficking network. When I discovered what was happening, I started extracting witnesses before Hale could reach them. He needed to discredit me before I exposed the whole operation." Nyla studied the evidence. It fit. Everything fit. The realization made her want to vomit. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "About Hale?" 18 months. Min-jae closed the laptop. "About you specifically?" 3 months. "And you just let me investigate you?" "I needed to know if you were part of his network or just an unknowing weapon." Min-jae stood. "Now I know." Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. They were out of time. Min-jae moved to a second hidden panel in the wall and pulled it open, revealing a narrow escape passage. "This leads to the roof. From there we can—" The door exploded inward. 3 contractors poured into the room, weapons raised. Nyla and Min-jae opened fire simultaneously. The gunfight lasted maybe 6 seconds. Bullets tore through furniture and walls and flesh. One contractor dropped immediately. The second took cover behind a filing cabinet. The third rushed Min-jae directly. They collided in a tangle of violence. Nyla shot the second contractor twice in the chest, then spun toward Min-jae. He had the third contractor in a chokehold, the man's neck bent at an unnatural angle. There was a moment of resistance, then a wet crack. The body went limp. Min-jae let it fall. Blood covered his silk shirt. His breathing was elevated but controlled. The serpent tattoo on his throat seemed to move in the dim light. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Nyla checked herself. "No." "Then we need to move. Now." They climbed into the escape passage and sealed the panel behind them. The narrow corridor was barely wide enough for one person, lit by emergency lighting. They moved in single file, Min Jae leading. "Where does this go?" Nyla asked. "Roof access. Then we cross to the adjacent building and disappear." "And then what?" "Then we plan how to destroy Victor Hale." They emerged onto this roof into cold night air and the distant wail of sirens. Manhattan sprawled around them in every direction, a city of lights and shadows, and 10 million people who had no idea what kind of monsters walked among them. Min Jae crossed to the edge and looked down at the street. "Police are surrounding the building," he said. "Hale probably called it in as an active shooter situation. They'll lock down the area." "Can your people get us out?" "Yes, but not yet." He turned to face her. "First, I need you to understand something." "What?" "The moment you stepped into that elevator, you stopped being FBI." Min Jae's voice was quiet. "Hale will paint you as a rogue agent, a psychopath, someone who went undercover and lost their mind. By morning, there will be a warrant for your arrest." Neela had already figured that out. "I know. And you're still willing to work with me?" She thought about Danny's body on the hallway floor, about Elena Vasquez and the 7 other women hidden in Min Jae's basement, about Victor Hale's face when he'd recruited her 6 years ago, telling her she was going to make a real difference hunting monsters. "Yeah," Nyla said. "I'm still willing." Min Jae studied her face for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. 10 minutes later, a black SUV pulled up to a service entrance 3 buildings over. They descended through maintenance shafts and service corridors, emerging into an underground parking garage. The driver didn't speak, didn't ask questions, just drove. They crossed the city in silence. Nyla watched the lights blur past, trying to process everything that had happened in the last hour. She'd walked into Eclipse Vale thinking she was hunting a serial killer. She was leaving as a fugitive, allied with a Mafia boss, hunted by her own mentor. The SUV stopped in Red Hook, outside what looked like an abandoned warehouse. "This is a safe house," Min Jae said. "My people use it for operations requiring discretion. You'll be secure here while we plan our next move." They got out. The warehouse was freezing inside, but there were sleeping quarters in the back, a functional bathroom, and enough supplies to last a week. Min Jae walked through the space methodically, checking security measures. Nyla stood in the center of the empty floor and felt the full weight of the night crash down on her. "I watched him die," she said quietly. Min Jae stopped. "The bartender. Danny." His name was Danny. Her hands were shaking again. "He was 25 years old. He talked about his girlfriend all the time. He was saving money to buy a ring." "I'm sorry." "Are you?" Neela turned to face him. "You're a criminal. You kill people for a living. Why would you care about some kid who poured drinks?" Min Jae was silent for a moment. Then he said, "I kill people who make the choice to enter my world. Soldiers, rivals, threats. Danny didn't make that choice. He was collateral damage in a war he didn't know existed." He paused. "That matters." "Does it?" "Yes." Nyla wanted to argue, wanted to hate him for being what he was, but she was too tired, and the lines between right and wrong had gotten too blurry to see clearly anymore. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you rest," Min Jae said. "Tomorrow, we start building the case against Hale. But tonight, you need sleep." "I can't sleep." "Try anyway." He left her alone in the warehouse, disappearing into the night with the same quiet efficiency he did everything else. Nyla stood in the darkness for a long time. Then she walked to the sleeping quarters, sat down on the bare mattress, and finally let herself shake. She'd crossed a line tonight, fired a weapon in defense of a criminal, fled from federal law enforcement, become exactly what Victor Hale would accuse her of being, a rogue agent who'd lost her mind. Except she hadn't lost her mind. She'd found the truth, and the truth was so much worse than any lie. Outside, sirens screamed through the city. Inside, Nyla Mercer closed her eyes and tried not to see Danny's blood spreading across the nightclub floor. She failed. Nyla woke to the sound of metal scraping concrete. Her hand went to the gun before her eyes opened. The Glock Min Jae had given her was still tucked under the thin pillow, cold and heavy. She sat up fast, adrenaline spiking, and found him standing in the doorway of the sleeping quarters, holding 2 paper coffee cups. "You sleep with your boots on," he observed. "Old habit." Nyla didn't lower the weapon. What time is it? 6:30. You've been out for 4 hours. He set one of the cups on the floor near her mattress. Black coffee. No sugar. That's what you drink. She stared at him. How do you know that? I've been watching you for 3 months, Agent Mercer. I know more about you than you think. The casual surveillance should have bothered her more than it did. But Nyla was too tired to care about privacy violations when federal contractors were trying to kill her. She holstered the gun and picked up the coffee. It was still hot, tasted like it came from a bodega, not Starbucks. Real coffee for people who needed the caffeine more than the experience. Did you sleep? She asked. No. Why not? Because someone needs to make sure you wake up alive. Min Jae leaned against the doorframe. His silk shirt from last night was gone, replaced by a simple black t-shirt that made the serpent tattoo stand out even more. I've been monitoring police channels. Hale has you listed as a federal fugitive, armed and dangerous, suspected of killing a civilian during a psychotic break. Danny. Yes. They're saying you shot him, then opened fire on responding officers before fleeing the scene. Nyla's jaw tightened. And people believe that? Why wouldn't they? You're a disgraced FBI profiler who went undercover in a criminal organization. The narrative writes itself. Min Jae pulled out his phone and showed her the screen. It's already on the morning news. She looked at the headline. Rogue FBI agent wanted in nightclub shooting. Below it was her academy graduation photo. They'd used the worst one, the picture where she looked angry, unhinged, exactly like someone who might snap and start killing people. Fuck, Nyla whispered. Hale moves fast, Min Jae said. By tonight, your face will be on every news station in the city. By tomorrow, the manhunt goes national. So what do? We build the case before he buries us. Min Jae pocketed his phone. I've arranged a meeting with someone who can help. But first, you need to understand what you're walking into. Who's the meeting with? A federal prosecutor named Catherine Zhou. She's been investigating the trafficking network independently. Doesn't trust the FBI. Doesn't trust local law enforcement. But she trusts evidence. Neela stood up, ignoring the ache in her muscles. And you think she'll believe us? I think she'll believe the files I've compiled over the past 18 months. Whether she trusts you is a different question. Great. Get cleaned up, Min Jae said. We leave in 20 minutes. He disappeared before she could respond. Nyla stood alone in the cold warehouse, drinking bodega coffee and trying to figure out how her life had collapsed so completely in less than 12 hours. Yesterday morning, she'd been an undercover FBI agent building a career-defining case. Now she was a fugitive drinking coffee with a Mafia boss, while the man who'd trained her tried to have her executed. She walked to the bathroom and splashed freezing water on her face. The mirror showed someone she barely recognized, dark circles under her eyes, blood spatter on her collar she hadn't noticed last night, hair that hadn't been washed in 2 days. She looked exactly like what the news was calling her, a psychopath. She stripped off the blood-stained shirt and changed into clean clothes from the supply closet Minji had pointed out earlier. Black jeans, black hoodie. Nothing that would stand out. Then she pulled her hair back, checked the Glocks magazine, and walked out to find Min Jae waiting by the warehouse exit. He looked her over once. Better. Where's this meeting happening? Brooklyn. Prosecutor Joe works out of a private office near Prospect Park, keeps her distance from federal buildings. Smart. They walked outside into gray morning light. The SUV from last night was gone, replaced by a nondescript sedan that could have belonged to anyone. Min Jae drove. Neela sat in the passenger seat and watched the city scroll past, searching for surveillance vehicles or patrol cars, or any sign they were being tracked. You're good at this, Min Jae said, after 10 minutes of silence. At what? Threat assessment. Most people would be panicking. You're calculating. Panic gets you killed. That's what I told my first lieutenant when he asked how I stayed calm during firefights. Min Jae glanced at her. You remind me of him. What happened to him? He panicked during a firefight. Got killed. Neela didn't know if he was joking. His expression gave nothing away. They crossed into Brooklyn as rush hour traffic started building. Min Jae navigated side streets with the efficiency of someone who'd memorized every shortcut in the city. 20 minutes later, they pulled up outside a brownstone near Prospect Park. This is it? Neela asked. Third floor. Joe runs a private practice specializing in civil rights cases, but her real work happens off the books. Min-jae turned off the engine. Let me do the talking initially. She's worked with me before. She hasn't worked with you. Worked with you on what? Witness protection. Evidence gathering. The kind of cases the federal system ignores because they're too politically dangerous. He opened the door. Come on. They climbed 3 flights of stairs to an unmarked door. Min-jae knocked twice, paused, then knocked 3 more times. The door opened. Catherine Zhou was mid-40s, Chinese-American, wearing a blazer over jeans and carrying the kind of exhaustion that came from fighting impossible battles for too long. She looked at Min-jae, then at Nyla, then back at Min-jae. You brought the fugitive FBI agent to my office, she said flatly. I brought the only person who can help us prove Victor Hale is the harbor butcher, Min-jae replied. Zhou stared at him. Then she stepped aside. Get in here before someone sees you. The office was small, cluttered with case files and legal books and coffee cups that looked like they'd been sitting there for days. Zhou locked the door behind them and pulled the blinds shut. You have 5 minutes, she said. Then I'm calling the police. You won't, Min-jae said calmly. Try me. Because you've been trying to build a case against the trafficking network for 2 years, and you haven't made progress because federal agencies keep blocking your access to evidence. Min-jae set a flash drive on her desk. I'm offering you everything you need to destroy the network. In exchange, you listen to what Agent Mercer has to say. Zhou picked up the flash drive like it might explode. What's on this? Financial records? Encrypted communications? Witness testimony from 8 survivors currently under my protection. He paused. And proof that Special Agent Victor Hale has been systematically murdering witnesses to protect the network's operations. The prosecutor's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Sit down, she said. They sat. Zhou plugged the flash drive into her laptop and started reviewing files. The only sound was her keyboard clicking and the distant hum of Brooklyn traffic. Neela watched her face, trying to read what she was thinking. After 10 minutes, Zhou looked up. Where did you get this? She asked Min-jae. Does it matter? Yes. Because if you obtained it illegally, I can't use it. Then I obtained it through anonymous sources and independent investigation. Zhou's mouth twitched. You're lying. Prove it. She turned to Nyla. And you? What's your version of events? Neela took a breath. Then she walked Zhou through everything. The undercover operation, the basement beneath Eclipse Vale, the contractors who tried to kill her, Danny's murder. She spoke clearly, precisely, the way she'd been trained to deliver testimony. Zhou listened without interrupting. When Nyla finished, the prosecutor leaned back in her chair. Victor Hale recruited you for this operation personally, she said. He's been your mentor for 6 years, and you expect me to believe he's a serial killer? I expect you to review the evidence, Nyla replied. Then decide for yourself. The evidence that came from a known organized crime figure, Zhou gestured at Min-jae. You understand how that looks. I understand that 8 women are alive because of him, and dozens more are dead because of Hale. Alleged. No. Proven. Nyla leaned forward. I've spent 3 months building a psychological profile of the harbor butcher. Every pattern points to someone with law enforcement training, access to federal databases, and intimate knowledge of trafficking investigations. Hale fits perfectly. Zhou was silent for a long moment. Then she said, even if you're right, this doesn't prove anything. Circumstantial evidence, anonymous sources, witnesses hidden by a criminal organization. No prosecutor could take this to trial. So we get more evidence, Min-jae said. How? We force Hale to make a mistake. Zhou laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. You want to use a federal fugitive as bait to catch a corrupt FBI agent. That's your plan. Yes. That's the stupidest thing I've heard all week. But you're considering it, Min-jae said. Because you know I'm right. Hale has been untouchable for years. This is the only way to expose him. The prosecutor stood and walked to the window, staring out at the street below. Neela could see her thinking, weighing risks against possibilities. Finally, Zhou turned around. I want to talk to the witnesses, she said. The 8 women you claim to be protecting. I need to hear their testimony directly. I can arrange that, Min-jae said. And I want access to all your files on the trafficking network. Everything, no redactions. Done. And if this goes wrong, if you're lying to me, if this is some kind of elaborate setup, I will personally make sure you spend the rest of your life in a supermax prison. Min Jae smiled. I wouldn't expect anything less. Joe looked at Nyla. And you. If we do this, you understand there's no going back. Your career is over. Your reputation is destroyed. Even if we prove Hale is guilty, you'll never be FBI again. Nyla had already accepted that truth somewhere around 4 a.m. while staring at the warehouse ceiling. I know, she said. Then we have an agreement. Joe picked up her phone. I'll need 48 hours to review everything and interview the witnesses. After that, we plan our next move. We don't have 48 hours, Neela said. Hale knows I'm still alive. He'll be hunting me. Then don't get caught. Joe's expression was cold. Because if the police find you before we build this case, there's nothing I can do to help you. They left the brownstone 10 minutes later. The street was busier now, early morning joggers and dog walkers moving through the neighborhood. Nyla kept her hood up, head down, aware that her face was probably on every phone and television screen in the city. That went well? Min Jae said as they reached the car. She doesn't trust us. She doesn't trust anyone. That's what makes her good at her job. He unlocked the doors. But she'll review the evidence, and once she does, she'll realize we're telling the truth. They got in the car. Nyla was about to ask where they were going next when her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, knowing she shouldn't. The FBI could track her location the second she powered it on, but something made her check anyway. 7 missed calls, all from Victor Hale, and 1 text message sent 5 minutes ago. We need to talk, Nyla. I can explain everything. Meet me at the place we first discussed the Harbor Butcher case. Come alone. I'm trying to help you. She stared at the screen. What is it? Min Jae asked. Nyla showed him the message. His expression darkened. It's a trap. Obviously. Then why are you considering it? I'm not. Nyla stopped. Because she was considering it. Some part of her brain was already calculating routes, planning approaches, wondering if there was any chance Hale was telling the truth. He's your mentor, Min Jae said quietly. The person who trained you, who believed in you. Of course you want to hear his side. I know it's a trap. Knowing doesn't make the pull any weaker. Nyla put the phone away. Where's the place you first discussed the case? A coffee shop in Tribeca, small place. 2 exits, lots of windows. She paused. He always said it was his favorite spot for sensitive conversations because you could see threats coming from every direction. How long would it take to get there from the prosecutor's office? 20 minutes. Why? Min Jae started the car. Because we're going to let him think you're coming alone. And then we're going to see who else shows up. That's insane. That's tactical. He pulled into traffic. Hale sent that message because he's desperate. He knows we met with Joe. He knows his window for eliminating you is closing, so he's trying to draw you out into the open. And you want to give him what he wants. I want to see his play, who he brings, how he positions them, what story he's prepared to tell you. Min Jae glanced at her. We don't engage. We watch. We learn. Then we disappear before he realizes you never showed. Nyla thought about it. And if something goes wrong? Then we improvise. Great plan. You have a better one? She didn't. They drove south through Brooklyn, crossing back into Manhattan as the morning sun burned through the gray sky. Tribeca was waking up, boutiques opening, restaurants setting up sidewalk tables, tourists starting their long day of spending money in someone else's city. Min Jae parked 3 blocks from the coffee shop. Wait here, he said. Where are you going? To position Overwatch. He pulled out his phone and sent a rapid series of text messages. I have people in the area. They'll set up surveillance and report back. Your people? Yes. Korean Mafia? Yes. Nyla shook her head. 6 months ago, I was building cases against people like you. And now you're working with people like me. Life is full of surprises. Min Jae pocketed his phone. Stay in the car. Keep your head down. I'll be back in 15 minutes. He got out and disappeared into the morning crowd. Nyla sat alone in the sedan watching people walk past. Normal people. People with normal problems. People who weren't fugitives hunted by corrupt federal agents and protected by organized crime figures. She pulled out her phone again, stared at Hale's message. I can explain everything. Part of her wanted to believe him, wanted there to be some rational explanation for why contractors had tried to kill her, why Danny was dead, why the man who'd taught her everything about profiling violent offenders might actually be one himself. But the evidence didn't lie, and Nyla had been trained to trust evidence over emotion. She put the phone away. 15 minutes later, Min Jae returned. Hale's already there, he said, sitting in the back corner. 2 contractors positioned across the street pretending to be construction workers. Another one in a van parked at the north exit. 3-person kill team. At minimum. There could be more I haven't spotted yet. Nyla processed the tactical picture. He's not planning to talk. He's planning to execute me the second I walk through that door. Yes? She felt something cold settle in her chest. Not surprise, not even anger. Just a kind of hollow confirmation that the mentor she'd trusted for 6 years was exactly what Min Jae had said he was. A killer. What now? She asked. Min Jae's phone buzzed. He checked it. His expression changed. What? Nyla demanded. One of my people just reported movement at the safe house where we're keeping the witnesses. He was already starting the car. Federal vehicles, SWAT formation. They're preparing to breach. Neela's stomach dropped. Hale found them. Or someone talked. Min Jae accelerated hard, cutting across 2 lanes of traffic. Either way, we have approximately 10 minutes before they raid the location. Can your people evacuate the witnesses? Not without exposing themselves. The building is surrounded. Then what? Then we get there first and do it ourselves. Min Jae drove like the city was a video game he'd already beaten. He cut through side streets and alleys, ran red lights, took corners at speeds that made the tires scream. Nyla braced herself against the dashboard and tried not to think about what would happen if they got pulled over. They reached Red Hook in 8 minutes. The safe house was a converted industrial building near the waterfront. From a block away, Nyla could see the tactical vehicles, 3 black SUVs, an armored transport, and what looked like a mobile command center. They're waiting for authorization to breach, Min Jae said. Standard SWAT protocol. Another 5 minutes, maybe less. How do we get 8 people out of a surrounded building in 5 minutes? We don't. We get them into the panic room and pray the contractors don't find them before we can figure out our next move. There's a panic room? I don't build safe houses without contingencies. Min Jae pulled into an alley behind a neighboring warehouse. Follow me. Move fast. Don't hesitate. They ran. Through the warehouse, across a narrow courtyard, up a fire escape that looked like it hadn't been used in decades. Min Jae moved with absolute confidence, never checking his path, never slowing down. Nyla followed, lungs burning, aware that every second mattered. They reached a rooftop access door. Min Jae pulled out a key, unlocked it, and they descended into the safe house from above. The 8 women were gathered in the main living area, looking terrified. Elena Vasquez saw them first. What's happening? Federal raid, Min Jae said. We have maybe 3 minutes. Everyone into the panic room. Now. He crossed to what looked like a solid concrete wall and pressed a hidden switch. A section of the wall slid aside, revealing a reinforced chamber maybe 12 feet square. Shelves with food and water. Medical supplies. Communications equipment. The women filed in quickly. They'd clearly practiced this. Stay quiet, Min Jae told them. Don't open this door for anyone except me or Agent Mercer. Understand? They nodded. He sealed the panic room. Outside, Nyla heard the sharp crack of a battering ram hitting the front door. They're breaching, she said. I know. Min Jae was already moving toward the rear exit. Let's go. They hit the stairwell just as the front door exploded inward. Shouts echoed through the building. Boot steps pounding on concrete. Radio chatter calling out room positions. Nyla and Min Jae descended 3 flights in near total darkness, using emergency lighting to navigate. At the bottom, Min Jae pushed through a service door into an underground parking garage. Empty, except for 1 motorcycle. Tell me you know how to ride, Min Jae said. I grew up in Detroit. Everyone knows how to ride. He threw her the keys and climbed on behind her. Nyla started the engine, and they shot out of the garage into gray morning light. Behind them, she heard shouting. saw tactical officers emerging from the building, weapons raised. She opened the throttle. The motorcycle screamed through Red Hook's narrow streets, weaving between cars and trucks and delivery vans. Nyla took corners at angles that physics shouldn't have allowed, using every trick she'd learned racing bikes as a teenager. Min Jae's arms were locked around her waist. "You're going to get us killed," he said in her ear. "You said move fast." "I meant tactically, not suicidally." She grinned despite everything and pushed the bike harder. 3 blocks later, she heard sirens. "Police," Min Jae said. "2 cars, closing from the east." Nyla cut down an alley barely wide enough for the motorcycle, emerged onto a commercial street, then dove into traffic. The patrol cars tried to follow but got blocked by a delivery truck. She didn't slow down. They crossed into Carroll Gardens, then Cobble Hill, putting distance between themselves and the raid. Finally, when Nyla was sure they'd lost pursuit, she pulled into a residential area and killed the engine. They sat there breathing hard. "Where did you learn to ride like that?" Min Jae asked. "Misspent youth." "I'm starting to understand why the FBI recruited you." Nyla climbed off the bike. Her hands were shaking from adrenaline. "The witnesses are safe for now, but Hale knows where the safe house is. He'll come back with warrants, search teams, everything he needs to find that panic room. Then we move them tonight." "To where?" "I have other locations. He can't know about all of them." "You sure about that?" Min Jae was silent, because they both knew the truth. Hale had found the safe house, which meant he had intelligence sources inside Min Jae's organization or access to surveillance capabilities they hadn't accounted for. Either way, they were compromised. "We need to change tactics," Neela said. "Stop reacting. Start attacking." "Attacking how?" She thought about it. "Hale tried to lure me to that coffee shop because he's desperate. He's making mistakes. We need to exploit that." "By doing what?" "By giving him what he wants." Nyla met Min Jae's eyes. "Me?" "Absolutely not." "Listen. No, I've seen this play before. Noble sacrifice. You walk into his trap, hope to get close enough to expose him, probably die in the process. It's stupid. It's tactical. It's suicide." "Then what's your plan?" Nyla demanded. "We can't keep running. We can't protect the witnesses indefinitely. And we can't build a case against Hale if we're hiding in warehouses waiting for him to find us." Min Jae stared at her. "You remind me of my lieutenant," he said finally. "The one who panicked and got killed?" "No, the one before him. The one who volunteered for an impossible mission because it was the only way to save our operation." He paused. "He succeeded, but it cost him everything. Sometimes that's the price. And you're willing to pay it." Nyla thought about Danny bleeding out on the nightclub floor, about Elena Vasquez and 7 other women living in a basement because the institutions designed to protect them had failed, about Victor Hale sitting in a coffee shop waiting to murder the agent he'd trained. "Yeah," she said, "I'm willing." Min Jae studied her face for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. He spoke rapid Korean for maybe 60 seconds, then hung up. "What was that?" Neela asked. "I'm calling in resources. If we're going to do this, we do it right." He looked at her. "But understand something. Once we start this play, there's no pulling back. Hale will throw everything he has at us. Federal agencies, local police, probably contractors from 3 different countries. It's going to get ugly." "I know. And when it's over, even if we win, your life as you knew it is finished. You'll never be FBI again, never be law enforcement. You'll be what I am." "What's that?" "Someone who operates in the spaces between legal and illegal. Someone who protects people the system won't protect. Someone who makes hard choices and lives with the consequences." His dark eyes held hers. "Is that what you want?" Nyla realized she'd already made this choice the moment she followed him into the basement beneath Eclipse Veil. "Yes," she said. Min Jae nodded slowly. "Then let's burn Victor Hale's world to the ground." They spent the rest of the day planning. Min Jae had access to resources Nyla hadn't imagined. Safe houses across 3 boroughs, encrypted communication networks, intelligence sources inside law enforcement and federal agencies. He moved through the criminal underworld the way she'd once moved through FBI offices, with absolute confidence and terrifying efficiency. By evening, they had a framework. Nyla would send Hale a message agreeing to meet, but not at the coffee shop, somewhere public, somewhere he couldn't easily stage an execution. They'd chosen Washington Square Park. Open space, multiple exits, hundreds of potential witnesses. Min-jae would position his people around the perimeter, not to engage, just to document, record everything, capture proof of Hale's contractors, his tactics, his desperation. And Catherine Zhou would be watching from a nearby building with a telephoto lens and recording equipment, gathering evidence for the case they were building. It was dangerous. It was probably stupid. But it was the only play they had. At 7 p.m., Nyla sent the message. I'll meet you. But not at your coffee shop, Washington Square Park, tomorrow at noon. Come alone or I disappear forever. Hale's response came 90 seconds later. Agreed, I'll be there. And Nyla, I'm sorry about everything. Let me explain. She stared at the text. Part of her still wanted to believe him, still wanted there to be some explanation that made sense of the horror. But the evidence didn't lie. He'll bring contractors, Min-jae said, reading over her shoulder. Positioned around the park, probably snipers on the surrounding buildings. I know. And the second you show your face, they'll try to kill you. I know that too. So what's the plan when that happens? Neela looked at him. We make sure it doesn't. The next morning came too fast. They'd spent the night in a different safe house, this one in the financial district, hidden inside what looked like an abandoned office building. Min-jae had moved the 8 witnesses there using routes and vehicles Hale couldn't possibly track. At least, that was the theory. Nyla barely slept. She kept thinking about Victor Hale, about the 6 years he'd spent training her, mentoring her, teaching her how to think like violent offenders, about the late nights reviewing case files and the early mornings at the shooting range, and the hundreds of small moments that had built her career. Had it all been manipulation? Had he been grooming her for this from the beginning? Or had something broken inside him along the way, turning the mentor into the monster? She didn't know, and maybe she never would. At 11 a.m., Min-jae found her staring out a window at the city below. Ready? He asked. No. Good. People who think they're ready for this kind of thing usually get killed. They went over the plan one final time. Nyla would approach from the south entrance of Washington Square Park. Min-jae's people would be positioned at every major exit and vantage point. Joe would be watching from a building on the east side with recording equipment. The goal wasn't confrontation, it was documentation. Proof that Victor Hale was willing to murder a federal agent in broad daylight. Proof they could take to prosecutors, journalists, oversight committees. Proof that would destroy him. Stay in public, Min-jae said. Don't let him isolate you. And if shooting starts, get to the fountain. My people will extract you from there. What about you? I'll be watching from the northwest corner. If anything goes wrong, I'll create a distraction. What kind of distraction? He smiled that tired smile. The kind that makes federal agents very unhappy. At 11:30, Nyla left the safe house. She walked through the financial district wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, just another face in the lunchtime crowd. The weather had turned cold, wind cutting between buildings like knives. She kept her hands in her pockets, right hand wrapped around the Glock's grip. Washington Square Park appeared ahead. She could see the arch, the fountain, the scattered benches where students and tourists and chess players gathered. It looked normal, safe, like nothing terrible could happen there. But Nyla had learned that terrible things happened everywhere. She entered the park from the south, scanned the crowd, and saw Victor Hale sitting on a bench near the fountain, exactly where he'd said he'd be. He looked the same as always, 53 years old, graying hair, strong build, the kind of face that inspired confidence in juries and terror in suspects. He wore a suit jacket over jeans, hands visible, posture relaxed, like he was just a man waiting for a friend. Nyla walked toward him. Her heart was hammering. Her breathing was too fast. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she kept walking. 20 feet away, Hale saw her. He stood slowly, expression pained. Nyla, thank God. I was worried you wouldn't come. She stopped 10 feet back. Where are your contractors? What? The kill team. Where are they positioned? Hale's expression shifted. Nyla, I don't know what Min-jae told you, but don't. Her voice was flat. I know what you are. I know what you've done. I came here because I wanted to hear you admit it. Hale was silent for a moment, then his mask dropped. The pain disappeared from his face, replaced by something cold and calculating. You really think you've figured it out, he said. The profiler who solved the case. How proud you must feel. I'm not proud. I'm furious. Why? Because I taught you everything you know and then used it against you? Hale stepped closer. That's tactical thinking, Nyla. That's how you win in this world. You identify assets, you develop them, and when they become liabilities, you eliminate them. I was never a liability. I was your student. You were a weapon, and weapons don't get to have opinions. He glanced around the park. But you've made things complicated. Allied with a Korean crime lord, convinced a prosecutor to investigate me, hidden my witnesses where I can't find them. Your witnesses? You mean the women you tried to murder? Women who would have destroyed a network generating $40 million annually. Women whose testimony would have collapsed careers, ended political ambitions, exposed corruption across 3 federal agencies. Hale's voice was almost gentle. They had to die, Nyla. That's just mathematics. She wanted to shoot him, wanted to pull the Glock and empty the magazine into his chest right there in front of hundreds of witnesses. But that would make her exactly what he'd accused her of being, a psychopath. You're not going to get away with this, she said. Hale smiled. I already have. You're a fugitive. Min-jae is a known criminal. Joe is a crusader with no evidence that would hold up in court. And I'm a decorated FBI agent with a spotless record and friends in very high places. The witnesses will testify. If you can keep them alive long enough, which you can't. He pulled out his phone. I've been tracking Min-jae's organization for months. I know every safe house, every contact, every weakness. It's only a matter of time before I find them. Then we'll move them again. Where? How many times can you run before you make a mistake? Hale pocketed his phone. This is over, Nyla. You just haven't accepted it yet. She took a step back, and that's when she saw them. 4 men moving through the crowd, not dressed like contractors, dressed like joggers, students, tourists, but moving with military precision, converging on her position. You said you'd come alone, Nyla said. I lied. Hale's expression was almost sad. I'm sorry it ended this way. You were brilliant. You could have been extraordinary, but you chose the wrong side. The contractors were 15 feet away. 10. Nyla's hand moved toward the Glock. Then gunfire erupted from the northwest corner of the park. Not aimed at her, aimed at the contractors. Min-jae had started his distraction. The park exploded into chaos. People screaming, running, stampeding away from the gunfire. The contractors scattered, returning fire toward Min-jae's position. Hale dove behind a bench, and Nyla ran. She sprinted toward the fountain exactly like Min-jae had instructed. Behind her, she heard more gunfire. Shouting, sirens starting to wail in the distance. Someone grabbed her arm. She spun, ready to fight. It was one of Min-jae's people, a young Korean man she'd seen at the safe house. This way, he said. They ran together, cutting through the panicking crowd. The fountain was ahead. Beyond it, a black SUV with the engine running. They were almost there when Nyla heard the shot. A single rifle crack from somewhere above. Sniper. The young man beside her jerked and fell, blood spreading across his chest. Nyla skidded to a stop. Go, he gasped. Get to the vehicle. But she couldn't leave him. She grabbed his jacket and tried to drag him toward the SUV. Another shot. This one missed her head by inches. And that's when Min-jae appeared, moving through the chaos like a shark through water. He grabbed the wounded man with one arm, grabbed Nyla with the other, and hauled them both toward the SUV. They made it, collapsed into the back seat while the driver floored the accelerator. The vehicle shot out of the park, tires screaming, leaving the gunfight behind. Nyla pressed her hands against the young man's chest, trying to stop the bleeding. Hospital, she said. No hospitals, Min-jae replied. They'll be watching every emergency room in the city. He needs a doctor, and he'll get one, at a place Hale doesn't know about. The young man was struggling to breathe. Blood bubbled between Nyla's fingers. Stay with me, she told him. You're going to be fine. He tried to say something, then his eyes rolled back and he went still. No! Nyla started chest compressions. No, no, no. Min-jae pulled her hands away gently. He's gone. She stared at the body. Another person dead because of her. First Danny, now this. What was his name? She whispered. Jin, Min-jae said quietly. He was 23. He had a younger sister. He wanted to open a restaurant someday. Nyla felt something break inside her chest. She'd gotten him killed, drawn him into a war he had no reason to fight, and he died protecting her. The SUV raced through Manhattan streets while sirens screamed in every direction. Somewhere behind them, Hale was spinning the narrative. Rogue FBI agent, gang violence, terrorist attack, whatever story would keep him safe and her hunted. Nyla looked at Minjae. His expression was granite. "This changes things," he said. "I know. Hale just killed one of my people in a public park. That's a declaration of war." "What are you going to do?" Minjae stared at Jin's body. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. When someone answered, he spoke a single sentence in Korean. Then he hung up and looked at Nyla. "I'm going to give Hale exactly what he wants," he said. "Me." "What are you talking about?" "I'm going to surrender, publicly, in front of cameras and federal agents and the entire city." His voice was cold. "I'm going to let them arrest me for being the harbor butcher." "That's insane. They'll lock you up forever." "They'll try." Minjae smiled. "But while they're focused on me, you're going to disappear. Take the witnesses, get them to Catherine Joe, build the case against Hale, and when the time is right, you're going to destroy him." "I can't do this alone." "Yes, you can. You're FBI, remember? This is what you were trained for." "I was trained to follow the law, not break it." "Then it's time to learn something new." Minjae leaned forward and spoke to the driver in Korean. The SUV changed direction. "I'm taking you to a location where Joe is waiting with extraction resources. From there, you disappear. New identity, new life. Long enough to finish what we started." "And you?" "I'll be fine. I've survived worse than federal custody." Nyla wanted to argue, wanted to tell him this was a terrible plan, but she could see the logic. Hale was hunting her. Hale was coming for the witnesses. Hale was closing every escape route. But if Minjae surrendered, the entire city would be watching. The media would be swarming. Federal agencies would be celebrating finally capturing the harbor butcher. And in that chaos, Nyla could disappear. "When?" she asked. "Tonight, outside the FBI field office. Maximum visibility." He looked at her. "But I need your word that you'll finish this, that you won't disappear and never come back." "You have my word." "Even if it costs you everything?" Nyla thought about Jin's body in the seat beside her, about Danny on the nightclub floor, about 17 murdered women and 8 more still hiding in basements. "Yes," she said. "Even then." Minjae nodded. "Then we have a deal." The SUV pulled up outside an unmarked building in Queens. Catherine Joe was waiting inside with 2 associates Nyla didn't recognize. "Jesus Christ," Joe said when she saw them. "What happened?" "Hale tried to kill Agent Mercer in Washington Square Park," Minjae said. "He failed, but we lost Jin." Joe's expression tightened. "I'm sorry. I'm surrendering tonight. While the Bureau is focused on arresting me, Mercer will move the witnesses to your secure location. You'll have 48 hours to interview them and build the case." 48 hours isn't enough time. "It'll have to be." Minjae pulled out a flash drive and handed it to her. "This contains everything I've compiled on Hale. Financial records, surveillance footage, testimony. Use it." Joe took the drive. "And if they put you in federal holding before we can move?" "Then you proceed without me." Minjae turned to Nyla. "Agent Mercer will coordinate with you directly." "I'm not an agent anymore," Nyla said quietly. "Then what are you?" She didn't have an answer. Minjae checked his watch. "I need to go. The surrender is scheduled for 10 p.m. That gives you 3 hours to move the witnesses." "Where are they now?" Joe asked. "Location encrypted on the drive. Mercer knows the access codes." He looked at Nyla one final time. "Don't die before this is finished." "Same to you." He almost smiled. Then he walked out into the rain. Nyla stood in the empty room with Catherine Joe and Jin's body and the weight of impossible choices. "What do we do now?" Joe asked. Nyla took a breath. "Now," she said, "we become what they already think we are, which is dangerous." Outside, the city burned with sirens, and somewhere in the darkness, Victor Hale was preparing his next move. But for the first time since this nightmare started, Nyla wasn't running. She was hunting. The rain came down like bullets. Nyla stood outside the FBI field office at exactly 10 p.m., hidden in the shadows across the street, watching Kang Min-jae destroy himself to save her. He walked through the rain alone. No bodyguards, no weapons. Just a man in a black coat surrendering to a system designed to crush people like him. News cameras were already positioned. Reporters held umbrellas and microphones. Federal agents formed a perimeter, their weapons trained on the Korean Mafia boss who'd terrorized their city for years. Min-jae stopped in the center of the street, raised his hands, and knelt on wet asphalt while red laser sights painted his chest like targets. Nyla's throat tightened. She'd known he was doing this, known it was the plan, but watching it happen felt like watching an execution in slow motion. Special Agent Victor Hale emerged from the building. He walked through the rain toward Min-jae with the expression of a man who'd finally won. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions. Hale ignored them all, focusing entirely on the kneeling figure. "Kang Min-jae," Hale said, loud enough for the microphones to catch. "You're under arrest for the murders of 17 women, for organized crime, for racketeering, for—" "I know what I'm being arrested for," Min-jae interrupted quietly. "Then you know you're going to spend the rest of your life in federal prison." "Maybe." Min-jae's dark eyes met Hale's. "Or maybe I'll live long enough to watch you join me there." Something flickered across Hale's face. Then he smiled. "Get him out of my sight." Federal agents swarmed Min-jae. They zip-tied his wrists, searched him roughly, and dragged him toward an armored transport. The Mafia boss didn't resist, didn't speak, just let himself be hauled away like cargo while the city watched. The transport doors slammed shut, and Nyla felt the last piece of her old life disappear with them. She turned away from the spectacle and walked back to where Catherine Joe was waiting in an unmarked van 3 blocks away. "It's done," Nyla said. Joe nodded. "Then we move. Now." They drove through Brooklyn in silence, the prosecutor navigating side streets while Nyla stared at her reflection in the rain-streaked window. Somewhere behind them, the media was already spinning the story. Notorious crime lord captured. Harbor butcher finally brought to justice. FBI celebrates major victory. All lies. But useful lies. Because while the city was focused on Min-jae's arrest, Nyla had 3 hours to move 8 witnesses to a secure location and start building the case that would destroy Victor Hale. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Safe house in Staten Island," Joe said. "Off the grid. No federal registration. Cash purchase under a shell company. Hale won't find it." "You sure about that?" "No, but it's the best option we have." They crossed into Staten Island just after 11 p.m. The safe house was a 2-story residential property in a quiet neighborhood where nobody asked questions. Joe had already positioned 2 private security contractors outside, former military, paid in cash, loyal to her personally. Inside, the 8 witnesses were waiting. Elena Vasquez saw Nyla first. "Where's Min-jae?" "Federal custody," Nyla said. "He surrendered himself so we could get you somewhere safe." The women exchanged looks. Fear, uncertainty. The kind of expression people got when they realized the only person protecting them had just disappeared. "What happens now?" another woman asked. Her name was Sarah Chen, 26 years old, former graduate student. She'd been missing for 8 months. "Now you tell Prosecutor Joe everything," Nyla said. "Every detail about the trafficking network, every name, every location, every piece of evidence you can remember." "And then what?" "Then we use your testimony to destroy the people who tried to kill you." Joe set up recording equipment in the dining room and started interviewing the witnesses one by one. Nyla listened from the adjacent room, taking notes, cross-referencing details with the files Min-jae had compiled. The stories were worse than she'd imagined. Judges who bought women like livestock, politicians who used trafficking networks to fund campaigns, federal agents who eliminated witnesses before they could testify. A system of corruption so deep and so protected that it had operated for years without anyone noticing, or rather, without anyone who noticed surviving long enough to talk. By 3 a.m., Joe had interviewed 6 of the 8 women. Nyla was exhausted, her eyes burned, her head pounded, but they were making progress, real progress, the kind of testimony that could collapse careers and end political dynasties. She stepped outside for air. The rain had stopped. The neighborhood was silent except for distant traffic. One of Joe's security contractors nodded at her from his position near the driveway. Nyla lit a cigarette she'd bummed from the contractor earlier and tried not to think about Min Jae sitting in a federal holding cell somewhere. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her check. Yeah? Agent Mercer. The voice was familiar, male, controlled. We need to talk. Nyla's blood turned to ice. How did you get this number? I've had this number for 3 months, Victor Hale said. I've been tracking your phone since the day you went undercover. Did you really think I wouldn't monitor my own operation? She wanted to throw the phone into the street, but she needed to know what he knew. What do you want? She asked. To offer you a deal. I'm not interested. You will be, because right now you're sitting outside a house in Staten Island with 8 witnesses and a prosecutor who thinks she's building a case against me. Hale paused. And in approximately 6 minutes, a tactical team is going to breach that location and eliminate everyone inside. Nyla's stomach dropped. You're bluffing. Am I? Check the street, 2 blocks north, black SUV, contractor team, fully armed. She looked. There was a vehicle parked exactly where Hale described. How did you find us? Nyla whispered. I told you, I've been tracking your phone, every call, every text, every location ping. Hale's voice was almost gentle. Did you really think you could hide from me, Nyla? I trained you. I know how you think. I know what mistakes you make when you're desperate. She'd been so careful, changed phones twice, used encrypted apps, followed every counter-surveillance protocol she knew. But Hale knew those protocols too, because he'd taught them to her. What's the deal? Nyla asked. Simple. You walk away, right now. Leave the witnesses. Leave Joe. Disappear. And I let you live. And if I refuse, then the contractors breach in 5 minutes and everyone dies, including you. Nyla's mind raced. She could warn Joe, could call the police, could try to evacuate the witnesses through the back. But Hale would be expecting all of those moves. Why offer me a deal at all? She asked. Why not just kill me with everyone else? Because you're still useful, Hale said. You're smart, capable, ruthless when you need to be. The kind of person who could work for me instead of against me. You want to recruit me. I want to stop wasting resources hunting you. Join me and you get protection, money, access to power most people can't imagine. And the witnesses? Collateral damage. Necessary casualties in a war you can't win. Nyla thought about Elena Vasquez, about Sarah Chen, about 6 other women who'd survived hell and were finally ready to testify. No, she said. No. I'm not walking away, and I'm not letting you kill them. Hale sighed. Then you're going to die in that house, Nyla, and it's going to be your fault. The line went dead. Nyla sprinted back inside. Zhu was in the dining room, still interviewing. The witnesses were scattered throughout the house, some sleeping, some drinking coffee, some staring at walls with the hollowed-out expression trauma victims got when they'd used up all their fear. We need to move, Nyla said. Right now. Joe looked up. What's wrong? Hale found us. Contractors are 2 blocks away. They're coming. The prosecutor's expression hardened. How long do we have? Minutes, maybe less. Joe stood and started barking orders at her security contractors. Get everyone to the vehicles. Back exit. Move fast. The witnesses scrambled. Elena grabbed her jacket. Sarah helped another woman who was moving too slowly. Everyone was asking questions, panicking, trying to process what was happening. Nyla pulled her Glock and moved to the front window. The black SUV was still parked 2 blocks north, but now its doors were opening. 4 men emerged. Tactical gear, suppressed weapons, moving with military precision toward the safe house. They're coming, Nyla said. Joe appeared beside her with her own weapon. Back door, now! They retreated through the house toward the rear exit. Joe's contractors were already loading the witnesses into 2 vehicles, a van and a sedan. The women were crying, shaking, barely holding together. Nyla helped Elena into the van. It's going to be okay. You said we'd be safe here, Elena whispered. I was wrong. I'm sorry. The first contractor reached the front door. Nyla heard the lock being picked, heard the door ease open, heard boots on hardwood floors. Go, Joe hissed. The vehicles pulled out of the driveway. Neela and Joe ran after them, weapons raised, covering their retreat. Behind them, the contractors breached the house. Gunfire erupted. Bullets punched through walls and windows, chasing Nyla and Joe as they sprinted down the residential street. The van accelerated hard. The sedan followed. One of Joe's contractors returned fire, buying them seconds. Then he went down, blood spraying across the pavement. Nyla grabbed Joe and pulled her around the corner just as a bullet tore through the space where her head had been. "We can't outrun them," Joe gasped. "We don't need to outrun them. We need to lose them." They cut through backyards and alleys, putting distance between themselves and the contractors. The vehicles were already gone, disappearing into Staten Island's maze of residential streets. Nyla's phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. She answered while running. "What?" "You're making this harder than it needs to be," Hale said calmly. "The witnesses are in 2 vehicles heading north. I have their license plates. I have their routes. They'll be intercepted in approximately 4 minutes. How does traffic cameras, facial recognition, real-time tracking." Hale sounded almost bored. "Did you really think you could move 8 people through my city without me knowing?" Neela stopped running. Joe looked at her. "What's wrong?" "He's tracking the vehicles." "How?" "Traffic cameras, city surveillance. He has access to everything." Nyla stared at the phone. "We can't run from him. He controls the entire infrastructure." Joe's expression was grim. "Then what do we do?" Nyla thought fast. "We split up, send the witnesses in different directions, make them choose which ones to chase. That just means some of them die instead of all of them." "You have a better idea?" Joe didn't. Nyla called the van driver and started giving instructions. Split the witnesses, change vehicles. Use routes that avoided major intersections and traffic cameras. Move unpredictably. It was a desperate plan. But desperation was all they had left. For the next 2 hours, they played cat and mouse through Staten Island and Brooklyn, switching vehicles, changing routes, using cash to buy burner phones and new transportation. The witnesses were scattered across 4 different cars now, moving independently, trying to stay ahead of Hale's surveillance network. At 6 a.m., Nyla received a text. "You can't run forever. Eventually, you'll make a mistake. And when you do, I'll be waiting." She stared at the message. Hale was right. They couldn't keep running, couldn't keep hiding. Every second they stayed on the move, they burned resources and exposed themselves to new risks. They needed a different strategy. "We need to go offensive," Neela said. Joe looked at her like she was insane. "How?" "Hale controls law enforcement, controls surveillance, controls everything." "Not everything." Nyla pulled up the files Min Jae had given them. "He doesn't control the media. He doesn't control public opinion. And he doesn't control what happens when the truth goes viral." "What are you suggesting?" "We leak everything, the files, the witness testimony, the evidence. We dump it all online and let the world see what he's been doing." Zhu shook her head. "That's premature. We don't have corroboration. We don't have chain of custody. Any defense attorney would shred this evidence in court." "Then we don't use courts. We use journalism, investigative reporters, independent media, people who ask questions the FBI doesn't want answered." "And if it backfires? If Hale spins it as a conspiracy theory? Then we're no worse off than we are right now." Nyla met her eyes. "But if it works, if even one major outlet picks up the story, Hale loses his cover. He can't operate in the shadows anymore. He becomes visible, vulnerable." Joe was silent for a long moment. Then she pulled out her laptop. "I know someone at the Times, investigative journalist. She's been trying to expose trafficking networks for years. Will she run the story? If the evidence is solid enough, yes." They spent the next 3 hours compiling everything into a package a journalist could verify independently. Financial records, surveillance footage, witness testimony recorded by Joe, the files Min Jae had gathered over 18 months. It was damning. Enough to destroy careers and collapse networks. Enough to make Victor Hale a target instead of a hunter. Joe sent the encrypted package at 9 a.m. Then they waited. Nyla sat in a diner in Queens, drinking coffee that tasted like industrial solvent and watching the door for contractors who never stopped coming. Her phone was off. Her gun was loaded. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Across from her, Joe looked just as wrecked. "How long until we hear back?" Neela asked. Could be hours. Could be days. Journalists have to verify sources, corroborate evidence. They won't run something this explosive without being absolutely sure. We don't have days. I know. Nyla's burner phone buzzed. She checked it. Text from an unknown number. Not Hale this time, someone else. Agent Mercer. We need to meet. I have information about Victor Hale you need to see. Come alone. Pier 57, 1 hour, no signature, no identification. Who is it? Joe asked. I don't know. Neela showed her the message. Could be a trap. Probably is a trap. Or it could be someone with information we need. Joe studied the message. You're actually considering this. We're running out of options. If there's even a chance someone has evidence against Hale, then they would have sent it instead of asking for a meeting. Joe's voice was sharp. This is textbook manipulation. Anonymous contact, isolated location, time pressure, everything designed to make you act without thinking. I know. Then why are you still considering it? Because Nyla was desperate. Because 8 women were scattered across the city with contractors hunting them. Because Min Jae was locked in federal custody and the case against Hale was hanging by a thread. Because she didn't have any better ideas. I'm going, she said. That's suicide. Maybe. But if there's any chance this is real, there isn't. You don't know that. Joe slammed her hand on the table. Yes, I do. Because I've been prosecuting criminals for 20 years and I know what bait looks like. This is Hale trying to isolate you, trying to get you alone so he can finish what he started. Then what do you suggest? We wait for the journalist to verify the story. We keep the witnesses hidden. We don't take unnecessary risks. And how long do we wait? How many more people die while we're being careful? Joe's expression softened slightly. I understand you're angry. I understand you want action. But getting yourself killed doesn't help anyone. Nyla stood. I'm going to Pier 57. You can come with me or you can stay here. But I'm going. Nyla, someone has to make a move, Catherine. We can't just hide forever. She walked out of the diner before Joe could respond. Pier 57 was a renovated waterfront complex in Hell's Kitchen. Shops, restaurants, public space. During the day, it was crowded with tourists and locals. At 10 a.m. on a Wednesday, it was nearly empty. Nyla arrived 15 minutes early. She circled the perimeter twice, looking for contractors, surveillance vehicles, anything that suggested an ambush. Everything looked normal, too normal. At exactly 10 a.m., someone approached. Not a contractor, a woman. Mid-30s, professional clothes, nervous expression. She carried a manila envelope and kept glancing over her shoulder like she expected someone to shoot her. Agent Mercer? She asked quietly. Who are you? My name is Rebecca Park. I worked for the FBI, Financial Crimes Division. She held out the envelope with shaking hands. I have evidence that Victor Hale has been embezzling money from seized assets. Millions of dollars. He's been using it to fund his operations. Nyla took the envelope. Why bring this to me? Why not go to your superiors? Because my superiors are part of it, Rebecca's voice cracked. I tried reporting it through official channels. They buried my complaint, threatened my career, told me to forget what I saw or I'd end up like the other analyst who asked too many questions. What other analysts? 3 people in my division have disappeared in the past 18 months. Officially, they quit, transferred, took other jobs. But I checked. None of them ever showed up at their new positions. Nyla opened the envelope. Financial records, bank statements, wire transfers, all showing money moving from federal seizure accounts into offshore holdings tied to shell companies. It was exactly the kind of evidence they needed. Too perfect, too convenient. Where did you get this? Nyla asked. Internal audit system. I've been documenting everything for months. And you waited until now to come forward? I didn't know who to trust. Rebecca looked around nervously. But when I saw the news about you, about what happened at Eclipse Vale, I realized you were the only person who might believe me. Every instinct Nyla had was screaming that this was wrong. But the evidence looked real, and if it was real, it could destroy Hale. I need to verify this, Nyla said. Give me your contact information. Rebecca's head exploded. The gunshot came from somewhere behind Nyla, a single suppressed rifle crack. Rebecca's body collapsed onto the pier, blood and brain matter spraying across the wooden planks. Nyla dove for cover behind a concrete pillar. More shots. Bullets punched through the air where she'd been standing. She returned fire blindly, trying to suppress the shooter while scrambling for better position. Then she saw him. Victor Hale, standing 30 feet away with a suppressed pistol. "You actually came," he said. "I wasn't sure you would." Nyla aimed at his chest. "Rebecca Park. Was she even real?" "Oh, she was very real. FBI analyst, embezzlement investigation. Everything she told you was true." Hale kept his weapon trained on her. "I just made sure she wouldn't live to testify about it." "You used her as bait." "I used her as bait in evidence disposal. 2 problems solved with 1 bullet." He smiled. "That's efficiency, Nyla. That's how you win." She wanted to shoot him, wanted to empty her magazine into his face, but they were in a public space, cameras everywhere, witnesses. Killing him here would make her exactly what he'd accused her of being, a murderer. "The media has your files," Nyla said, "your financial crimes, your connection to the trafficking network. It's over." Hale laughed. "Is it? You sent encrypted files to a journalist who will spend weeks verifying sources before publishing anything. By then, I'll have buried the story, discredited the witnesses, framed it as a conspiracy theory from a rogue agent and a criminal organization. The evidence came from Kang Min Jai, a known crime lord. No court will touch it. No journalist will stake their reputation on it." He took a step closer. "You were always good at building profiles, Nyla, but you never understood how the real world works. Evidence doesn't matter. Narrative matters, and I control the narrative." Another gunshot. This one came from behind Hale. He staggered forward, blood spreading across his shoulder. Catherine Joe emerged from behind a shipping container, weapon raised. "Narrative this," she said. Hale spun and fired. Joe dove for cover as bullets chewed through metal and concrete. Nyla used the distraction to advance, flanking Hale from the opposite side. They had him in a crossfire. "Drop the weapon," Nyla shouted. Hale looked at her, then at Joe, then at the blood seeping through his jacket. He dropped the gun. "It's over," Nyla said. "No." Hale smiled through the pain. "It's not." That's when Nyla heard the sirens. Police vehicles, lots of them, converging on the pier from every direction. "I called it in 10 minutes ago," Hale said. "Active shooter, federal agent down. They're coming for you, Nyla. Not me. You." Joe swore. "We need to move." But they were surrounded. Patrol cars blocked every exit. Officers poured out, weapons drawn, shouting commands. "Drop your weapons, hands up, now!" Nyla looked at Hale. He was still smiling. "You lost," he said quietly. "You just don't know it yet." Police rushed the pier. Nyla and Joe dropped their weapons and raised their hands. Officers swarmed them. Rough hands forced them to the ground. Zip ties cut into Nyla's wrists. Someone was reading her rights, but the words sounded distant and meaningless. She'd been so close. So fucking close, and now it was over. Hale was being treated by paramedics, playing the victim. The wounded FBI agent who'd bravely confronted a rogue operative and stopped her before she could kill again. The media would eat it up, the Bureau would protect him, and Nyla would spend the rest of her life in federal prison. She was hauled to her feet and dragged toward a patrol car. That's when she saw it. Min Jae's face on every phone screen around the pier. Breaking news coverage. But not about his arrest. About his press conference. Somehow, impossibly, Kang Min Jae had been released from federal custody. And he was standing in front of cameras with 8 women beside him, the witnesses Nyla had been protecting while they testified about everything Victor Hale had done. Live. On every news channel in the country. Nyla stared at the screens. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. The officers hadn't confiscated it yet. She couldn't reach it with her hands zip-tied, but she could see the notification on the lock screen, a text from Min Jae. "Trust me." This was always the plan. Then the world exploded. Not literally, but close enough. Federal vehicles screeched onto the pier. Agents poured out. Not NYPD anymore. FBI. And leading them was a woman Nyla recognized from the news. Deputy Director Sarah Chen, the second highest ranking official in the Bureau. She walked past the NYPD officers, past the paramedics treating Hale, and stopped directly in front of Victor Hale. "Special Agent Hale," she said coldly. You're under arrest for murder, corruption, and conspiracy to commit human trafficking. Hale's expression finally cracked. What? We've been monitoring you for 3 weeks, ever since Kang Min-jae's organization contacted us with evidence of your activities. Chen gestured, and federal agents swarmed Hale. You thought you were hunting a rogue agent. You were actually the target of a joint task force investigation. Hale looked at Nyla. Understanding dawned in his eyes. You knew, he whispered. No, Nyla said. But Min-jae did. Chen turned to the NYPD officers. Release them. They're federal witnesses, not suspects. The zip ties came off. Nyla stood there, rubbing her wrists, trying to process what had just happened. Min-jae had played everyone, not just Hale. Her too. The entire surrender, the entire plan. It had all been theater designed to make Hale expose himself while federal investigators gathered evidence. And it had worked. Victor Hale was dragged toward a federal transport, screaming about corruption and conspiracies. Nobody listened. The evidence was overwhelming. The witnesses were already testifying. The media was broadcasting every detail. He was finished. Chen walked over to Nyla. Agent Mercer, I'm sorry about what you've been through. We couldn't bring you into the investigation without exposing our operation, but you did exceptional work. I'm not an agent anymore, Nyla said quietly. Actually, you are. Your termination was never processed. It was part of the cover. Chen handed her a badge. Welcome back. Nyla stared at the badge. Everything she'd lost, handed back like it had never been gone. But it had been gone, and she'd changed in the absence. I need to see Min-jae, she said. Chen nodded. He's at the federal building. Follow me. They drove through Manhattan in silence. The city looked different now. Less threatening, like the monster that had been hunting her had finally been caged. At the federal building, Nyla was escorted to a conference room. Min-jae sat inside, drinking coffee and looking completely unbothered by the chaos he'd orchestrated. You lied to me, Nyla said. I protected you, Min-jae corrected. If you'd known about the federal investigation, Hale would have seen it in your behavior. You needed to believe you were alone, desperate, willing to take extreme risks. You used me. I used everyone, including myself. He stood. But we won. Hale is finished. The trafficking network is exposed. 8 women get to live normal lives instead of hiding in basements. And what about Jin? What about Danny? They're still dead. Min-jae's expression hardened. Yes, they are. That's the cost of fighting people like Hale. Good people die. That's why the fight matters. Nyla wanted to argue, but she couldn't, because he was right. What happens now? She asked. Now you decide who you want to be. Min-jae walked to the window. The FBI wants you back. Deputy Director Chen personally requested you join her anti-corruption task force. You'd have resources, authority, the ability to hunt people like Hale officially. And the other option? Work with me. Off the books. No badge, no official sanction, just results. Nyla looked at the badge Chen had given her, then at Min-jae. 2 paths, 2 completely different futures. I need time to think, she said. Take all the time you need. Min-jae finished his coffee. But choose carefully, Agent Mercer, because once you make this decision, there's no going back. He walked out. Nyla stood alone in the conference room, holding a badge that represented everything she'd fought to become and everything she'd learned to question. Outside, the city continued its indifferent rhythm. And somewhere in the machinery of justice, Victor Hale was finally being held accountable for the monsters he'd created. But Nyla knew the truth. There were more monsters out there, more Hales, more networks of corruption and violence, and someone had to hunt them. The question was how, and who she'd have to become to do it. She looked at the badge one more time, then she made her choice. Nyla set the badge on the conference table and walked out. She found Min-jae in the parking garage, leaning against a black sedan and checking his phone like he'd been expecting her. That was fast, he said. I'm not going back to the FBI. Good. He pocketed his phone. Because I need your help with something they can't touch. What? Victor Hale wasn't working alone. The trafficking network he protected, it's still operational. Different handlers, different routes, but the same infrastructure. Min-jae opened the car door. Someone needs to dismantle it. The Bureau won't move fast enough. Too much politics. Too many compromised officials. Nyla climbed into the passenger seat. And you think we can? I think we're the only ones willing to try. They drove through Manhattan in silence. The city looked the same as it always had. Millions of people moving through their lives with no idea what kind of wars were being fought in the spaces between legality and chaos. Where are we going? Nyla asked. To meet someone who knows where the network's real power sits. Minjae turned onto the FDR drive. Her name is Lucia Reyes, former enforcer for the Sinaloa cartel. She's been trying to get out for years, but they won't let her walk away. Why would she help us? Because I'm offering her something the cartel won't. Freedom. They crossed into the Bronx and parked outside what looked like a condemned apartment building. Minjae led her up 4 flights of stairs to a door with 3 deadbolts. He knocked twice. The door cracked open. A woman's face appeared, early 40s, scarred, with eyes that had seen too much violence to ever fully relax. You're late, Lucia said. Traffic, Minjae replied. She let them inside. The apartment was sparse, mattress on the floor, single chair. Windows covered with blackout curtains. Everything designed for someone who needed to disappear fast. Lucia looked at Nyla. FBI? Former, Nyla said. Good. I don't talk to feds. She sat on the chair and lit a cigarette. Minjae says you want to burn down the trafficking network. Yes. Why? Because it needs to burn. Because... Lucia smiled without humor. That's not a reason. That's ideology. Ideology gets you killed. I need to know what you're actually willing to do. Nyla thought about Danny, about Jin, about 8 women who'd spent months hiding in basements because the system designed to protect them had failed. Whatever it takes, she said. Lucia studied her face. Then she pulled out a map and spread it across the floor. The network operates through 3 hubs, she explained. New York, Miami, Los Angeles. Each hub has a primary operator who coordinates logistics, payments, and enforcement. Kill the operators, and the network collapses. Who are they? Minjae asked. New York is run by someone called the Broker, real name unknown, handles all East Coast operations. Miami is controlled by a former DEA agent named Marcus Vega. LA belongs to a tech executive named David Chen who uses shipping containers and cryptocurrency. Nyla pulled out her phone and started taking notes. How do we find them? That's the problem. They're ghosts. No public profiles, no digital footprints. The only people who know their real identities are other operators. Lucia tapped the map. But there's a meeting happening in 72 hours. All 3 operators will be in the same room. Private estate in Westchester County. Annual planning session. How do you know this? Because I used to provide security for these meetings. Lucia's expression was cold. Before I realized what I was protecting, Minjae leaned forward. Can you get us inside? Maybe, but it'll cost you. How much? Not money. I want out. Full extraction, new identity, protection from cartel reprisal. And I want your word that you'll actually destroy this network, not just arrest a few people who get replaced next month. You have my word, Minjae said. Lucia looked at Nyla. What about you? You get us inside that meeting, Nyla said, and I'll make sure the people running this network never hurt anyone again. Dead or arrested. Does it matter? Lucia smiled. No, it doesn't. They spent the next 2 days planning. The estate in Westchester was a fortress, 20-acre property, private security, biometric access controls. The kind of place designed to keep out anyone who wasn't supposed to be there. Lucia had worked security for 5 years. She knew the rotation schedules, the blind spots in the camera coverage, the service entrance guards used to smoke cigarettes. The meeting happens in the main house, she explained. 2nd floor. Private conference room. No recording devices allowed. No phones. Just the 3 operators and their personal security. How many guards total? Nyla asked. 15, maybe 20, all former military or law enforcement, well-armed, well-trained. And you think the 3 of us can get past them? No, I think we bring help. Minjae made a call. 6 hours later, they met with his lieutenant, a Korean enforcer named Park, who looked like he'd been carved from stone. He brought 4 others with him, All soldiers from Min Jae's organization, all willing to die for this. You're sure about this? Park asked in Korean. Min Jae answered in the same language. Nyla couldn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. This was suicide. But they were doing it anyway. On the third day, they moved. 2 vehicles, 8 people. Enough weapons to start a small war. They drove north through Westchester in silence, watching the suburbs give way to estates and gated properties where Manhattan's elite hid from the city they'd built their fortunes on. The estate appeared ahead. Stone walls, iron gates, security checkpoint. Lucia was in the lead vehicle, dressed in her old security uniform. She pulled up to the checkpoint and showed her credentials. The guard checked his list, frowned, then waved her through. They were in. The vehicles parked near the service entrance. Min Jae's soldiers moved out first, spreading across the property with practiced efficiency. Nyla followed Min Jae and Lucia toward the main house. Guards change shift in 10 minutes, Lucia whispered. That's our window. They moved through the kitchen entrance. 2 guards inside drinking coffee and complaining about overtime. Park neutralized them both before they could reach for their weapons. Quick, silent, professional. The team advanced, up the service stairs, down a hallway lined with expensive art, past rooms where caterers were preparing food for a dinner that would never happen. They reached the 2nd floor. The conference room was ahead, 2 guards outside the door. Lucia approached them like she belonged there. Relief rotation, she said casually. The guards looked at her. One of them frowned. We weren't notified. Park shot them both. Suppressed pistols. 2 shots. Both guards dropped. The door burst open. Inside, 3 men sat around a conference table. The broker, Marcus Vega, David Chen, all of them reaching for weapons that weren't there. Don't move, Min Jae said. His soldiers poured into the room, weapons raised. The 3 operators froze. Nyla stepped forward, studying their faces. The broker was older than she'd expected. Mid-60s, expensive suit, the kind of face that looked trustworthy on television. Marcus Vega was younger, Latino, with the hard eyes of someone who'd spent too many years undercover and forgotten which side he was on. David Chen looked like every tech executive Nyla had ever seen. Glasses, casual clothes, the arrogance of someone who believed money made them untouchable. Who the fuck are you? The broker demanded. The people shutting you down, Nyla said. Chen laughed. You have no idea what you're doing. We have connections, lawyers, politicians. You can't touch us. Watch me. She pulled out her phone and started recording. State your names and your role in the trafficking network, she said. I'm not saying shit, Vega spat. Min Jae pressed his gun against Vega's temple. Try again. The former DEA agent's expression changed. Fear replaced defiance. Marcus Vega, I coordinate logistics for the Miami hub. And the others? The broker stared at Nyla with cold hatred. But he talked. Gave his real name, Gerald Ashworth, former investment banker, detailed his operations, listed names of judges and federal officials who'd been compromised. David Chen was last. He tried to negotiate, offered money, promised connections. When that failed, he talked too. Nyla recorded everything. 10 minutes of testimony that would collapse the network. Then she heard gunfire downstairs. We've got company, one of Min Jae's soldiers shouted from the hallway. More guards, responding to the breach. The entire security force was mobilizing. Time to go, Min Jae said. What about them? Nyla gestured at the 3 operators. We take them with us. Living witnesses. Park zip-tied the 3 men while Lucia moved to the window and checked their exit route. More vehicles coming up the driveway, she reported. At least 3 SUVs were surrounded. Min Jae's jaw tightened. How many guards total? I'm counting 20, maybe more. They were outnumbered 3-1. Nyla looked at the 3 operators, then at Min Jae. We can't fight our way through 20 armed guards while dragging prisoners. Then what do you suggest? She thought fast. We make them choose between chasing us and protecting their network. How? Nyla walked to the conference table and started gathering documents, financial records, client lists, operational plans, everything the operators had been reviewing during their meeting. We burn it all, she said, set fire to their records, Force them to choose between stopping us and saving their infrastructure. Lucia pulled out a lighter. I like the way you think. They doused the room in alcohol from the wet bar and set it ablaze. Flames spread fast, consuming documents and furniture and decades of operational planning. Alarms screamed, sprinklers activated, guards shouted downstairs. Minjae's team moved fast, dragging the 3 prisoners toward the back stairwell. Gunfire erupted from below. Park returned fire while the others descended. They hit the ground floor and found chaos. Guards were scrambling, some trying to fight the fire, others trying to stop the intruders. Nobody was coordinating. Nobody was in control. Minjae exploited the confusion perfectly. His soldiers moved through the chaos like predators, eliminating threats with surgical precision. Nyla stayed close to the prisoners, weapon raised, ready to shoot anyone who got too close. They reached the service exit. Both vehicles were waiting, engines running. "Move!" Minjae shouted. They piled into the cars. Lucia drove the lead vehicle with Nyla and the prisoners. Minjae and his soldiers took the second vehicle, providing rear security. The gates were ahead, closed. "Ram it," Nyla said. Lucia floored the accelerator. The vehicle hit the iron gates at 60 miles per hour. Metal screamed and bent. The gates gave way, and they shot through onto the main road. Behind them, security vehicles gave chase. Lucia drove like she was trying to break the laws of physics. She cut across 2 lanes, took a turn at a speed that made the tires scream, and accelerated through a red light that nearly got them killed by cross-traffic. The pursuing vehicles fell back slightly, but they didn't stop. "They're not giving up," Nyla said. "Good," Lucia replied. "Neither are we." She cut down a side street, then another, weaving through Westchester's suburban maze. Behind them, Minjae's vehicle was running interference, forcing the security cars to split their attention. Then Nyla heard the distinctive crack of rifle fire. One of the pursuing vehicles had a shooter leaning out the window. Bullets punched through the rear windshield. Gerald Ashworth screamed. Nyla ducked low, pulling the 3 prisoners down with her. Glass exploded across the interior. The vehicle swerved as Lucia fought to maintain control. "We need to lose them," Nyla shouted. "I'm trying." More gunfire, this time from Minjae's vehicle. Park was returning fire with a submachine gun, suppressing the pursuers. Lucia cut onto the highway. Traffic was heavy. She wove between cars like they were standing still, using every gap, every opportunity. The pursuing vehicles tried to follow, but got blocked by civilian traffic. Slowly, they pulled ahead. 5 miles later, they'd lost the pursuit. Lucia exited the highway and drove to a prearranged safe house in Yonkers, an abandoned warehouse Minjae's organization used for operations requiring discretion. They dragged the 3 prisoners inside. Gerald Ashworth was bleeding from a cut on his forehead. Marcus Vega looked like he might vomit. David Chen was praying quietly. Minjae checked his phone. "Catherine Zhou just texted. The video you recorded is enough for arrest warrants. Federal prosecutors are moving tonight." "Good," Nyla said. She looked at the 3 men who'd built an empire on human suffering. "You're finished," she told them. "The network is burned, your files are destroyed, your connections won't save you. And every person you hurt, every woman you trafficked, every witness you tried to kill, they're all going to watch you go to prison." Ashworth glared at her. "You think you've won. You think this changes anything. There are a dozen networks like ours, hundreds of people making billions of dollars. You killed one organization. So what? Another one will take its place." "Maybe," Nyla said. "But you won't be running it, and that's enough for today." Federal vehicles arrived 20 minutes later. Deputy Director Chen personally oversaw the arrests. The 3 operators were hauled away in separate transports, while Catherine Zhou documented everything for prosecution. Chen pulled Nyla aside. "We're going to need your testimony," she said. "Everything that happened tonight. Everything you witnessed." "You'll get it. And I need to know, are you coming back to the Bureau?" Nyla looked at Minjae. He was talking to Park in Korean, gesturing at something on his phone. His soldiers were cleaning weapons and checking wounds. They looked like a military unit after a successful operation. They looked like family. "No," Nyla said. "I'm not coming back." Chen nodded slowly. "I understand, but the offer stands, if you ever change your mind." "I won't." The deputy director left. Nyla walked over to where Minjae stood. "It's done," she said. "Phase 1 is done," he corrected. There are still people out there, still networks, still corruption. And we're going to hunt them. Yes. She looked at him. Why are you doing this? You could walk away, disappear, live quietly, but you keep fighting. Min Jae was silent for a moment. Then he said, when I was 16, my sister was taken by traffickers. I spent 2 years looking for her. By the time I found her, she was already dead. His voice was quiet. I built this organization to make sure other people's sisters don't die the way mine did. The criminal empire is just cover. The real work is protecting people the system won't protect. Neela understood. They were the same. Both of them broken by failures. Both of them trying to build something good out of the wreckage. What happens now? She asked. Now we prepare for what's coming. What's coming? Min Jae showed her his phone. An encrypted message. No sender identification. Just 5 words. You killed the wrong people. Nyla's blood turned cold. Who sent this? I don't know, but whoever it is, they knew about tonight's operation, knew about the raid, knew we'd be successful. Someone inside our network? Or someone watching from outside? Min Jae pocketed his phone. Either way, we have a new problem. Park approached them, speaking rapid Korean. Min Jae's expression darkened as he listened. What? Nyla demanded. The 8 witnesses we've been protecting, the safe house in Staten Island. Min Jae looked at her. It just exploded. The words hit like a fist. What? Gas leak. That's what the fire department is reporting. But Park's contact inside FDNY says it was deliberate. Someone planted charges. Nyla's mind raced. The witnesses, they weren't there. I moved them yesterday. Different location. They're safe. Relief flooded through her. Then rage. Someone tried to kill them. Yes. Someone who knew where they were. Someone with access to our operations. Min Jae started walking toward his vehicle. We need to move, now. If they hit the safe house, they'll hit our other locations next. They drove through the night in silence. Nyla kept seeing that message. You killed the wrong people. It implied there were right people to kill. People more important than the 3 operators they'd just arrested. People still operating. They reached a warehouse in Red Hook. Min Jae's entire organization was mobilizing. Soldiers checking weapons. Intelligence operatives reviewing security footage. Everyone preparing for war. Park met them at the entrance. We found something, he said in accented English. He led them to a computer terminal where a young woman was reviewing encrypted communications. Someone's been monitoring our operations for weeks, she explained. They have access to our secure channels, our locations, our personnel. Who? Min Jae demanded. I don't know. But they're using bureau-level encryption, government-grade surveillance. Nyla felt ice spread through her chest. The FBI is compromised, or someone inside the FBI is working with whoever sent that message. The analyst pulled up a file. I traced the encryption signature. It matches protocols used by federal counterintelligence operations. Min Jae's jaw tightened. Victor Hale had a partner, someone higher up, someone we didn't catch. Who? I don't know, but they're still active, and they just declared war. The warehouse door exploded inward. Flashbangs detonated, smoke filled the air. Tactical teams poured through the breach, weapons raised, moving with military precision. Not FBI, not NYPD. Something else. Nyla dove for cover as gunfire erupted. Min Jae's soldiers returned fire, but they were outnumbered and caught off guard. The attackers moved like special forces, coordinated, efficient, lethal. Someone grabbed Nyla from behind. She fought instinctively. Elbow to the ribs, heel to the instep. The attacker grunted but held on, dragging her backward through the smoke. Then Min Jae appeared. He put 3 bullets into the attacker's chest at point-blank range. The man dropped. Move! Min Jae shouted. They ran through the warehouse, dodging gunfire and explosions. Park was ahead, clearing a path with controlled bursts from his submachine gun. Bodies dropped. Smoke thickened. The entire building was turning into a war zone. They reached a back exit, more attackers waiting. Min Jae threw a flashbang. The explosion bought them seconds. They burst through, firing as they moved. Outside, 3 black helicopters circled overhead. Spotlights swept the ground. Tactical vehicles surrounded the building. This is a military operation, Nyla said. Yes, which means someone with serious resources wants us dead. They sprinted toward the waterfront. Behind them, the warehouse was burning. Ahead, the East River stretched dark and cold. "Can you swim?" Min-jae asked. "Are you serious?" "Very." He grabbed her hand and jumped. They hit the freezing water together. The impact knocked the air from Neela's lungs. She surfaced gasping, the current already pulling her downstream. Min-jae was beside her, swimming with powerful strokes toward the opposite shore. Bullets hit the water around them. Spotlights swept across the river. Helicopters circled, searching. But the darkness and current provided cover. They swam for what felt like hours, finally reached the Brooklyn shoreline and dragged themselves onto a concrete pier, shivering and exhausted. "What the fuck was that?" Neela gasped. "That was someone with government resources trying to eliminate us." Min-jae pulled out his phone. Waterlogged. Useless. "We need to find out who." "How?" "We go to the source." "What source?" Min-jae stood, water dripping from his clothes. "Deputy Director Chen. She's the only person with authority to launch that kind of operation. Either she ordered it, or she knows who did." "You think Chen is dirty?" "I think we don't know who to trust anymore." He started walking. "So we find out. Tonight." They crossed Brooklyn on foot, staying off main roads, avoiding cameras. Nyla's clothes were soaked. Her teeth wouldn't stop chattering. But adrenaline kept her moving. 2 hours later, they reached Chen's residence in Park Slope, a brownstone with security cameras and a private entrance. "This is insane," Nyla said. "She's the deputy director of the FBI. Which means if she's compromised, the entire bureau is compromised. And if she's not, then she helps us figure out who just tried to kill us." Min-jae picked the lock in 15 seconds. They entered the brownstone quietly. No alarms, no guards, just an empty house where a federal official lived alone. They found Chen in her study, working late on her laptop. She looked up as they entered. Her hand moved toward a drawer. "Don't," Min-jae said, raising his weapon. Chen froze. "What the hell are you doing in my house?" "Someone just attacked my warehouse with military-grade tactical teams," Min-jae said. "Government resources, federal encryption. I need to know if you ordered it." "I didn't order anything." "Then who did?" Chen's expression was unreadable. "Put the gun down and I'll tell you." "Tell me first," she sighed. "There's a task force. Above my clearance level. Counterintelligence. They've been tracking your organization for months. Tonight they got approval to move." "Approval from who?" "Someone in the intelligence community. I don't have a name, just authorization codes." Chen pulled a file from her desk. "They think you're working with foreign intelligence, compromising federal operations. They want you eliminated." Nyla felt the pieces falling into place. "Victor Hale's partner. Someone high up. They're using counterintelligence as cover to finish what Hale started." "That's my theory too," Chen said, "but I can't prove it without more evidence." Min-jae lowered his weapon slightly. "What kind of evidence?" "Access to the task force's operational files. Proof that they're not hunting foreign threats, that they're protecting the trafficking network." "And how do we get that?" Chen smiled grimly. "We break into the most secure building in Manhattan, the FBI's counterintelligence division." Nyla stared at her. "You're serious?" "Completely. Because if we don't expose this conspiracy in the next 24 hours, you'll both be dead. And so will everyone who's been helping you." Min-jae and Nyla exchanged looks. "When do we move?" Min-jae asked. "Tomorrow night, during the shift change. I'll get you inside. You get the files. We expose the conspiracy before they kill us all. And if we get caught, then we die trying." Chen closed her laptop. "But that's better than dying without fighting back." Nyla knew she was right. They'd come too far to stop now. "We're in," she said. Chen nodded. "Then get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be the most dangerous night of your lives." They left the brownstone and disappeared into the Brooklyn night. Neela's mind was racing. 24 hours to break into the FBI's most secure division, steal classified files, expose a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of government. It was suicide. But it was also the only play they had left. She looked at Min-jae. "You know we're probably going to die tomorrow." "Probably," he agreed. "And you're still doing this?" "Yes." "Why?" Min-jae stopped walking, turned to face her. "Because some things are worth dying for, and making sure innocent people don't get murdered by their own government is one of them." Nyla realized she felt the same way. Somewhere along this nightmare, she'd stopped being an FBI agent following orders. She'd become something else, something dangerous, something the system couldn't control. And tomorrow night, she was going to war against that system. "Let's burn it all down," she said. Min-jae smiled. Together. They shook hands in the darkness, two monsters preparing to hunt the biggest monster of all. And somewhere in the machinery of power, someone was watching, waiting, planning their deaths. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd given Nyla Mercer and Kang Min-jae nothing left to lose. And people with nothing left to lose were the most dangerous weapons in the world. The countdown had begun. 24 hours until they either exposed the conspiracy or died trying. The city slept. But they didn't. They had work to do. And tomorrow, the world was going to burn. The FBI's Counterintelligence Division occupied floors 18 through 22 of the federal building in Lower Manhattan. Biometric security, armed guards, surveillance systems designed to catch foreign spies and domestic threats. Tonight, it was going to catch something else. Nyla and Min-jae sat in Deputy Director Chen's car 3 blocks away, watching the building through the rain-streaked windshield. It was 11 p.m. Shift change happened at midnight. They had exactly 1 hour to prepare for the most dangerous operation of their lives. "The security protocols are updated every 6 hours, Chen said from the driver's seat. "Current authentication requires fingerprint, retinal scan, and voice recognition. I can get you past the first checkpoint using my credentials. After that, you're on your own." "What floor are the files on?" Nyla asked. 20, server room. Everything's air-gapped from the main network. No remote access. You have to be physically present to extract data. Min-jae studied the building's layout on a tablet. Guards? 4 per floor during night shift, plus roaming patrols, plus rapid response teams on standby. Chen looked at them. "This is your last chance to walk away. Once you cross that threshold, there's no coming back." Nyla thought about Danny bleeding out on the nightclub floor, about Jin dying in her arms, about 8 women who'd survived hell only to have their safe house bombed. "I'm not walking away," she said. Min-jae put the tablet down. "Neither am I." Chen nodded slowly. "Then let's go." They drove to the federal building's underground garage. Chen's credentials got them past the vehicle checkpoint without questions. She parked in a reserved spot near the service elevators. "Remember," Chen said as they got out, "you have 40 minutes. After that, the overnight supervisor runs a full system check. If anything's out of place, the entire building locks down." "Understood," Min-jae said. They walked to the elevators. Chen swiped her badge. The doors opened. They rode up in silence. At the 18th floor, the elevator stopped. A guard was waiting, young, alert, hand resting casually near his sidearm. "Evening, Director," he said. "Evening. I'm escorting 2 consultants to review classified materials on 20. Authorization code 77 Delta 9. The guard checked his tablet, frowned. "I don't have that code logged." "It came through an hour ago. Check again." He did. Still nothing. His hand moved closer to his weapon. Chen moved faster. She grabbed his wrist, twisted hard, and slammed him against the elevator wall. The guard tried to fight back, but Min-jae was already there, applying pressure to his carotid artery. 10 seconds later, the guard went limp. They zip-tied him and left him in the elevator. "So much for subtle," Nyla said. "We're past subtle," Chen replied. "From here, it's speed and violence." They moved down the corridor. The 18th floor was mostly administrative offices, dark, empty, silent. They reached the stairwell and climbed. At the 20th floor, they stopped. Chen checked her watch. "Shift change in 28 minutes. The server room is at the end of the main hallway. 2 guards outside. You'll need to neutralize them without raising alarms." "How?" Nyla asked. Min-jae pulled a suppressed pistol from his jacket. "Quietly." They pushed through the stairwell door. The hallway stretched ahead, fluorescent lights humming, security cameras tracking every angle. 2 guards stood outside the server room exactly as Chen had described. Min-jae and Nyla approached with confident strides, like they belonged there. "Help you?" one of the guards asked. Min-jae shot him. The suppressed gunshot was barely louder than a cough. The guard collapsed. His partner reached for his weapon, but Nyla was already moving. She closed the distance in 3 steps and drove her knife into his throat before he could draw. Blood sprayed across the wall. The guard made a wet choking sound and fell. Nyla pulled her knife free, breathing hard. Her hands were shaking. She'd killed before. Contractors who were trying to murder her. People who'd made the choice to enter this world. But this guard had just been doing his job. He would have shot you, Min-jae said quietly. Don't second-guess survival. She nodded, tried to believe him. Chen was already in the server room door using her credentials to bypass the lock. The door hissed open, revealing rows of black servers and cooling equipment. Find Terminal 7, Chen said. That's where the task force stores operational files. They moved through the server room. Everything was labeled, organized, sterile. Terminal 7 was in the back, behind 3 layers of additional security. Chen plugged in a bypass device. This'll take 5 minutes. Keep watch. Nyla and Min-jae positioned themselves at the entrance, weapons raised. Seconds crawled past. Somewhere in the building, an alarm started to wail. Shit, Chen hissed. They found the guard in the elevator. How long? Min-jae asked. 3 more minutes. We don't have 3 minutes. Then we improvise. The alarm intensified. Nyla heard boots pounding down corridors, radio chatter. The entire building was mobilizing. Got it, Chen said. She pulled a flash drive from the terminal and pocketed it. Move! They ran back toward the stairwell. A tactical team appeared at the other end of the hallway. 6 operators in full gear, weapons raised. Federal agents, hands up! Min-jae and Nyla opened fire. The hallway erupted into chaos. Bullets tore through drywall and fluorescent lights. The tactical teams scattered, returning fire with disciplined bursts. Nyla felt something hot punch through her shoulder. She stumbled, kept firing. Beside her, Min-jae was advancing methodically, putting rounds exactly where they needed to go. 2 operators dropped. The others fell back. Stairwell, Chen shouted. They burst through the door and descended. Behind them, the tactical team was regrouping. Below them, more boots were climbing. They were trapped. Roof, Min-jae said. They reversed direction, climbing instead of descending. Nyla's shoulder was bleeding badly. Each step sent pain screaming through her nervous system, but she kept moving. They hit the roof access door, locked. Min-jae shot the lock 3 times and kicked the door open. Cold night air and rain hit them like a wall. The Manhattan skyline spread out in every direction, a city of lights that didn't care about the small wars being fought in its shadows. Now what? Nyla gasped. Chen was already on her phone. I called for extraction. Helicopter's coming. How long? 4 minutes. Behind them, the door burst open. Tactical teams poured onto the roof, weapons raised. Too many to fight, too many to escape. Min-jae raised his weapon anyway. Stop! A voice commanded. A woman emerged from the tactical team. Mid-50s, severe expression, carrying herself with the authority of someone who gave orders and expected them to be followed. Nyla recognized her from intelligence briefings. Assistant Director Margaret Reeves, head of counterintelligence, the person who'd ordered the attack on Min-jae's warehouse, the person protecting the trafficking network. You've made a terrible mistake, Reeves said calmly. Whatever Chen told you, whatever you think you've uncovered, it's wrong. You're interfering with a national security operation. National security? Nyla repeated. Is that what you call protecting traffickers? I call it protecting assets. Intelligence sources. People who provide information we need to prevent threats far worse than anything you can imagine. Bullshit, Chen said. You're protecting criminals because they pay you, because they have dirt on you, because you're just as corrupt as Victor Hale. Reeves smiled. Victor Hale was a useful fool. He thought he was running the operation. He never realized he was just middle management. The pieces fell into place. Hale hadn't been the top. He'd been a pawn, and Reeves had been the player moving all the pieces. How long? Nyla asked. How long have you been doing this? 15 years, building networks, cultivating sources, making sure the right people stayed in power and the wrong people disappeared. Reeves gestured at the tactical team. And I'm not going to let 3 idealistic children destroy everything I've built. You murdered innocent women, Nyla said. I eliminated security risks. There's a difference. Not to me. Reeves shrugged. Then you're going to die maintaining your principles. How noble. She raised her hand to signal the tactical team. That's when the helicopter arrived. It came in fast and low, spotlights blazing, rotors screaming over the rooftop. Not federal, not law enforcement, Min Jae's people. The helicopter's side door opened. Park was inside with a mounted machine gun. He opened fire. The tactical team scattered as bullets tore across the rooftop. Reeves dove for cover behind an air conditioning unit. Her operators returned fire, but they were exposed and outgunned. Go! Min Jae shouted. They ran for the helicopter. Chen went first, diving through the open door. Neela followed, her injured shoulder screaming. Min Jae came last, firing behind him as he ran. The helicopter lifted off. Below them, the tactical team kept firing. Bullets punched through the fuselage. One of Min Jae's soldiers jerked and fell, but they were already gone, rising above Manhattan's skyline, disappearing into the rain and darkness. Inside the helicopter, Nyla collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. Blood soaked her sleeve. Her vision was blurring. Stay with me, Min Jae said. He was applying pressure to her wound. We're almost clear. Did we get the files? Chen held up the flash drive. Everything. Operational records, financial transactions, communications. Enough to destroy Reeves and everyone working with her. Good, Nyla whispered. Then she passed out. She woke up 12 hours later in a safe house she didn't recognize. Her shoulder was bandaged. An IV drip ran into her arm. Min Jae sat in a chair beside the bed, looking like he hadn't slept. Where are we? Nyla asked. New Jersey, one of my properties. You've been out since the extraction. She tried to sit up. Pain exploded through her shoulder. The files. Catherine Zhou has them. She's already distributed copies to journalists, prosecutors, and congressional oversight committees. Min Jae helped her lean back. It's over. Reeves is finished. So is everyone working with her. Nyla let that sink in. The trafficking network? Being dismantled as we speak. Federal raids across 3 states. Dozens of arrests. The 8 witnesses are testifying publicly. He paused. They're safe. Finally. She closed her eyes, felt something loosen in her chest, something she'd been carrying since the night Danny died. What about us? She asked. Catherine Zhou negotiated immunity. For both of us. In exchange for testimony about Reeves's conspiracy. Min Jae's expression was unreadable. We're not fugitives anymore. We're witnesses. And after we testify? After, we're free. No charges. No warrants. Clean slate. Nyla thought about that. A clean slate. The chance to walk away from all of this and build a normal life. Except she didn't want a normal life anymore. What are you going to do? She asked. Min Jae stood and walked to the window. My organization is fractured. Half my people are dead. The ones who survive don't trust anyone. It'll take years to rebuild. Are you going to rebuild? I don't know yet. He turned to look at her. What about you? Chen offered you a position, senior investigator, anti-corruption task force, real authority to hunt people like Reeves. And you think I should take it? I think you'd be good at it. You're relentless, principled. The kind of person who doesn't stop until justice gets done. Justice, Nyla repeated. Is that what we did? Broke into federal buildings, killed guards, started wars. We stopped monsters from hurting innocent people. That's justice. The rest is just semantics. She wanted to believe him, wanted to think the violence had been worth it, but the faces kept haunting her. Danny, Jin, the guard she'd stabbed in the throat, all the collateral damage left behind in the pursuit of something righteous. I don't know what I am anymore, she said quietly. Min Jae sat back down. You're someone who survived, someone who fought when fighting mattered. That's enough. Is it? It has to be. Because if we let the guilt consume us, then the monsters win anyway. They sat in silence for a long time. Outside, New Jersey sprawled in the afternoon light, suburban houses and strip malls and normal people living normal lives. People who'd never know about the war that had been fought to keep them safe. Neela's phone buzzed. A text from Catherine Zhou. Congressional hearing scheduled for next week. Your testimony is required. After that, you're free. Whatever you choose to do next is your decision. Thank you for everything. Neela showed the message to Min Jae. One more fight, she said. The last one. he agreed. The congressional hearing happened on a cold Tuesday morning in Washington. Nyla sat at a table facing 24 representatives and senators, cameras broadcasting everything to the nation. She wore a simple suit Chen had provided. Her shoulder was still bandaged beneath her jacket. For 6 hours, she testified. About Victor Hale, about Margaret Reeves, about the trafficking network and the corruption that had allowed it to operate for 15 years, about the women who'd been murdered to protect powerful people's secrets. She didn't sugarcoat anything, didn't protect anyone, just told the truth and let it burn. When she finished, the committee chair, a senator from California, leaned forward. Agent Mercer, you've described activities that violated numerous laws: breaking and entering, assault, unauthorized access to classified materials. Do you regret any of it? Nyla thought about that. Then she said, no, because if I hadn't broken those laws, innocent people would still be dying, and the people responsible would still be in power. So you believe the ends justify the means. I believe that sometimes the system fails. And when it fails, someone has to stand between innocent people and the monsters hunting them, even if it means becoming a monster yourself. The hearing room was silent. Then the senator nodded. Thank you for your testimony, Agent Mercer. You're dismissed. She walked out of the Capitol building into cold sunlight. Min-jae was waiting on the steps, hands in his pockets, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. How'd it go? He asked. I told the truth. They didn't like it. They never do. They walked down the steps together. At the bottom, Catherine Zhou was waiting with 2 federal marshals. Your immunity agreement is finalized, she said. No charges will be filed. You're free to go. Nyla felt the weight lift. What about the witnesses? In protective custody. They'll testify at Reeves's trial next month. After that, they get new identities and federal protection for as long as they need it. And Reeves? She'll spend the rest of her life in prison, along with everyone who worked with her. Joe paused. You did good work, Nyla. Both of you. The world is safer because of what you did. Nyla didn't feel like a hero. She felt like someone who'd survived something terrible and didn't know how to process it yet. Joe handed her an envelope. Job offer, if you want it. Anti-corruption task force, significant authority, good salary, the chance to keep hunting people like Reeves. Nyla took the envelope but didn't open it. I need time to think, she said. Take all the time you need. Joe shook her hand. But don't disappear forever. The world needs people like you. The deputy director walked away. Nyla and Min-jae stood on the Capitol steps, watching Washington move around them. Politicians and lobbyists and staffers all playing their roles in the machinery of power. What are you going to do? Min-jae asked. I don't know yet. You? Rebuild. Carefully. Make sure the next organization I build actually protects people instead of just pretending to. You think that's possible? I think it has to be. Otherwise, what was the point of any of this? Nyla looked at him. The Korean Mafia boss who'd destroyed his empire to save innocent lives. Who'd surrendered himself to federal custody to give her a chance to survive. Who'd become the only person she trusted in a world full of liars. Thank you, she said. For what? For not letting me die. For believing I could be more than what the FBI made me. Min-jae smiled that tired smile. You were always more than that. You just needed to see it. He turned to leave. Min-jae, he stopped. If I take Joe's offer, if I join the task force and keep hunting corrupt officials, will you help me? Off the books? Way off the books. He considered it. What are you proposing? A partnership. You operate in the shadows. I operate in the light. Together, we hunt the people the system won't touch. That's dangerous. Everything we do is dangerous. And probably illegal. Definitely illegal. Min-jae laughed. It was the first time she'd heard him genuinely laugh. All right, but we do it right. No more reckless operations, no more getting shot. We plan, we prepare, we win. Deal. They shook hands on the Capitol steps. 2 predators forming an alliance to hunt bigger predators. It wasn't justice the way textbooks defined it, but it was the kind of justice that actually protected people, and that was enough. 3 months later, Nyla moved into a small apartment in Brooklyn. She'd accepted Joe's offer and joined the anti-corruption task force. Most of her work was legitimate, investigating federal officials, building cases, working within the system. But sometimes, when the system failed, she made calls to people who operated outside it. Min-jae had rebuilt his organization smaller and more focused. Less criminal enterprise, more protective network. He still ran illegal operations, money laundering, smuggling, the things that funded his real work. But the core mission had changed. Now they protected people, witnesses, victims, people the system abandoned. And when powerful figures tried to hurt those people, Min-jae's organization made sure they regretted it. Nyla didn't ask for details. She just provided intelligence and looked the other way when justice happened off the books. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. The 8 witnesses from the trafficking network had all testified, gotten new identities, started new lives. Elena Vasquez was in college. Sarah Chen had opened a nonprofit helping other survivors. The others were scattered across the country, learning how to be normal again. Victor Hale had been convicted and sentenced to life in federal prison. Margaret Reeves was awaiting trial, held in solitary confinement after 3 attempts on her life by inmates who didn't appreciate corrupt officials. The trafficking network was dismantled, dozens of arrests, billions of dollars in assets seized. It wouldn't stay dismantled forever. Nyla knew that. There would always be powerful people willing to hurt vulnerable ones. Always be networks of corruption hiding behind legitimate institutions. But for now, the world was a little safer, and that was worth celebrating. One evening, Nyla's phone buzzed. A text from Min-jae. Dinner? I found a place in Koreatown that doesn't ask questions. She smiled. Time? 8. Bring your appetite. And maybe your weapon, just in case. Always. She got dressed and took the subway into Manhattan. The restaurant was small, hidden on the second floor of a building that looked abandoned from the street. Min-jae was already there, sitting at a corner table with a view of the exits. Old habits. You look better, he said as she sat down. Less like someone who just survived a war. I'm sleeping more than 4 hours a night. It's miraculous. How's the task force? Busy. We're investigating a federal judge in Boston, bribery, fraud, possibly worse. Need help? Not yet, but I'll let you know. Food arrived, Korean barbecue. Soju, the kind of meal that tasted better when shared with someone who understood what you'd survived. They ate in comfortable silence. After a while, Min-jae said, I got a call yesterday from one of the witnesses, Elena. How is she? Good. Scared. She's been getting messages. Someone knows her new identity. Someone's watching her. Nyla's expression hardened. Did you verify it? Yes. Someone inside federal witness protection is compromised, selling information. Do you know who? Not yet, but I will. Nyla thought about it. This is exactly the kind of case the task force can't touch. Too many political connections, too much bureaucratic interference. I know. So we do it your way. Min-jae smiled. Our way. Together. She raised her glass. To hunting monsters. He clinked his glass against hers. To protecting people. They drank. Outside, the city moved through its endless rhythm. Millions of people living their lives, unaware of the small wars being fought in the shadows to keep them safe. And somewhere in those shadows, Nyla Mercer and Kang Min-jae were preparing for the next hunt. Not law enforcement and criminal. Not hero and villain. Just 2 people who'd learned that sometimes the only way to fight monsters was to become something monstrous yourself. But to use that darkness to protect light. Later that night, Nyla stood on her apartment rooftop, looking out at the Brooklyn skyline. She thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago. The FBI agent who believed in rules and procedures and the fundamental goodness of institutions. That woman was gone. In her place was someone harder, someone who'd killed, who'd broken laws, who'd allied with criminals and burned bridges and survived things that should have destroyed her. But she'd also saved lives, protected innocent people, stopped monsters the system wouldn't touch. And she'd do it again. Because the world wasn't divided into good and evil the way she'd once believed. It was divided into people who protected others and people who preyed on them. Everything else was just noise. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Min-jae found the leak in witness protection. Federal marshal named Thomas Crane works out of the Boston office, selling information to the same networks we dismantled. What do you want to do? Nyla typed her response. What we always do. Hunt him. Expose him. Make sure he never hurts anyone again. When do we start? Tomorrow. She put the phone away and stared at the city. Somewhere out there, Thomas Crane was selling vulnerable people's locations to the monsters hunting them, thinking he was safe, thinking his badge and his connections would protect him. He was wrong, because Nyla Mercer wasn't FBI anymore. She was something else, something the system couldn't control, and she was coming for him. The hunt never ended. The monsters kept appearing, but so did the hunters. And as long as innocent people needed protecting, Nyla and Min Jae would be there in the shadows. Not heroes, just people who'd learned that sometimes the darkest paths led to the most important destinations. She turned away from the skyline and went back inside. Tomorrow they'd start hunting again. Tonight, she'd rest. Because the war against corruption and violence and institutional failure was never truly won. It was only fought. One battle at a time, one monster at a time, one saved life at a time. And that was enough. It had to be. Because the alternative was letting the darkness win. And Nyla Mercer had spent too long in that darkness to let it consume the light. So she'd keep fighting, keep hunting, keep standing between innocent people and the monsters who wanted to destroy them. Not because she was noble, not because she was righteous, but because someone had to, and she'd learned that she was very, very good at it. The city slept, but the hunters didn't. They never did. Because somewhere in the shadows, there were always people who needed saving. And Nyla Mercer and Kang Min Jae had made it their life's work to make sure those people survived. No matter the cost, no matter the sacrifice, no matter how dark the path became. They'd walk it together. Two monsters hunting bigger monsters. And in that mission, they'd found something neither of them expected. Purpose. Redemption. And the knowledge that sometimes the most broken people were the ones best equipped to protect others, because they understood what it meant to survive, and they'd be damned if they'd let anyone else suffer the way they had. The story didn't end with victory. It ended with continuation, with the understanding that justice was a war, not a battle. And Nyla Mercer and Kang Min Jae were soldiers in that war, fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves, until the day they couldn't fight anymore. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The end.